started in Genesis chapter 3.
Yeah, we went way back to
God
Genesis.
breathed into the clump of clay.
Oh, can I just say one thing?
Yes.
Yeah.
I follow this atheist page on Facebook, right? And
Right.
all these Christians get engaged and they get so mad.
Yeah.
And so I wrote, I said, listen, guys, like, why waste your time? Honestly, this is for atheists. This is an atheist page, and we're kind of intruding on their space. And besides, we're all going to believe one day. Oh my gosh, those atheists were so mad.
Ah! They don't want to be included in grace.
So anyway, so I said, well, I mean, I just want to make sure I understand. Okay, so what was there before, like, what was there before the Big Bang? And the answer is nothing. And I said, and what happens after you die? And it said nothing. And I said, so what you're telling me is that when you die, you merge with your creator.
How did they react to that?
Oh, they were mad, very mad.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's their problem that they have no invisible means of support.
I don't know. I just like pulling their chain once in a while.
You're
That's
the perfect
interesting you
person
follow
for
that
it,
page.
Sherry.
What's that?
I'd love to be a fly on the wall when you do that. That'd be fun.
All in good fun. I don't get mean or hurt anybody's feelings. That's besides the point, right? But I do have some fun with them.
Uh-huh.
Okay, we are rolling and recording, so go ahead.
Okay, Kent, you were listening to it just a bit ago. What did you get out of the initial?
It doesn't look like we're recording.
Yeah.
Is it?
Are we recording?
Just let me double check. I just got an email saying we are recording live.
Well, the
record button isn't on.
The words disappeared. It said.
Let's see. It says live. There's a red button here. I'm just on the other thing. So yeah.
Oh yeah, it says we're on YouTube. Okay, good.
Yeah. So the twofold life of Adam, the stereo life of Adam, I've heard you chat about that before, and I find it very self-explanatory. It explains the Genesis. We've been in all ever since the beginning of time. Beautiful.
Right. Now in Genesis it said God formed the man from the dust of the ground and he breathed into Adam the breath of lives. In the original Hebrew, the word life there is lives. Although most translations of the Bible put it in singular, it is actually plural. So, I mean, it's evident from what happened in the account after that Adam had more than one life. Because, like we said, God had told Adam, in the day that you eat of the fruit of the tree, knowledge of good and evil, you will surely die that day. And in fact, he did die that day, but he also died 900 and some years later. So he obviously had more than one life. So tonight we would like to look at these two lives and how they function together. Now, this is a very simple thing, but sometimes the simple things are difficult to put into words because they're just natural and we take them for granted. And when you try to explain them or define them, it's easy to get lost. So we will take it for granted that Adam had two lives, that man had two lives. All the descendants of Adam were born with two lives. After the fall, when Adam had eaten the fruit, God spoke to Adam and Eve and said, he defined this twofold life in another way. He said, the seed of the serpent, he said, I'll put enmity between the serpent and the woman, and the seed of the serpent will bruise his heel, and the seed of the woman will crush his head. So there again, you have a reference to a twofold life that has animosity between the two. The seed of the serpent and the seed of the woman, which was the seed of Christ. Paul explains it in Galatians that the seed of woman is Christ in you. So we have these two diametrically opposed lives that are at war with one another. And one of them would attack the other, and the other one would overcome that one. So it is evident that man has a twofold life. Although because we've only been living in the one, it's difficult to explain that we have two. Because many people, well, the world at large, accepts the fact that man only has one life, and he has to do the best he can with it, and work as best he can and improve that, and be the best person he can, and because life is him living it. And there's very little, even in Christian circles, unfortunately, there's very little reference to the fact that man has another life that he can turn to. You talk about, the church talks about being, well, parts of the church talk about being born again, which means just about anything and everything, depending on who you ask. But it's generally accepted by the born again believers that they are born of the Spirit of God. Whatever that means, that's another issue. But the question we want to look at tonight is, okay, if man has two lives, and these lives are contesting each other, like Paul said, if you walk in the flesh, you shall die, but if you walk in the Spirit, you shall live. And then in Galatians, he says that the life based on Spirit is at enmity or in opposition to the law that's lived in the flesh. And these two, he says, these two lives are absolutely contrary. They're opposing each other. And then he makes a very crazy statement. He said, so you cannot do the things that you choose, which is very interesting. So how is it that we have two lives, and how do we understand, or how do we recognize, or how do we participate in these two lives? So I want to give you an example from nature, because like I say, nature is very kindergarten simple, but it's very difficult. Like, for example, chickens lay eggs. Now, if you ask me to explain how that happens, I'm going to have a very difficult time explaining to you how a chicken lays an egg. We just take it for granted that chickens lay eggs. They just do.
Could you speak to my chickens, please?
Okay. So they're supposed to lay eggs. If they don't, there's something wrong. But now if I try to take that apart and explain to you, okay, a chicken lays eggs because of this and this and this and this and this and this. By the time I'm finished, the chicken is long dead, and it probably won't ever lay an egg again. So we just accept nature as it is. So I'm going to try and take the chicken apart for you and explain to you how the chicken lays an egg without killing the chicken. So,
darn, I've got the barbecue sauce ready.
all right. What is it that let's go to the example of nature. What we have, what we call hunger in our experience. Every time we work hard and we haven't eaten for a day or so, we experience what is called hunger. Now, hunger is an interesting phenomenon. What is it? What is hunger?
A lack.
It's
Lack of food that we need to sustain us.
yes, it's an indication of a lack, but it is also more than just a lack. It is what? It's a desire for.
Exactly.
It's a lack of food, and it's a desire for food.
Erica, you're muted if you're trying to.
A need for food.
Desire, need.
Yes,
Yeah.
it's a need. It is a need. It's an expressed need. It's how our body expresses its need for food and its desire for it. So that's what a hunger is. It's an expressed desire for the need of food. And if the hunger gets more and more intense, it is an expression of the lack of food. If you haven't eaten for a week, then the hunger gets overbearing, and that is an expression of the lack of food. And there's other expressions too. Anyway, so here's the question I want to ask. What is it that fits our stomach or our body for food? How is it that food helps us or does us any good?
Well, our whole digestive tract, our whole system is designed to receive food,
Yes, and that
take the nutrients out of it.
and that need, that inner need for nutrients, is expressed through a hunger for that food. And that hunger for food is what makes us fit to eat food. I mean, if we didn't have any hunger for food, would we eat food?
Probably not.
If it was chocolate.
Yes, because my mouth gets lonely.
Yeah, well, we do things by habit because of a learned habit. But if we never had a hunger for food, food wouldn't even be part of our our on our need list. We wouldn't buy that food. I don't like it up there.
Oh, sorry.
We wouldn't have food on our list, and we wouldn't even pay any attention to food. We wouldn't grow it. No, it wouldn't be anything called farmers. There wouldn't be any grocery stores. There wouldn't be anything because nobody would need food and nobody would have hunger for food. So food would not be available. There would nobody be making it or growing it, and we would just live our life without food. So the thing that makes us food and us have a good relationship together is the fact that we are hungry for it. And if we didn't have a hunger for it, not only would there be no food, but we would have no relationship to food at all. We wouldn't spend any money on it. We wouldn't spend any time earning any money to buy it. It would just be like something we never heard about. And therefore, the thing that creates a relationship between us and food is the fact that we need it and we have a hunger for it.
Right, we got that.
Okay, bring that back into the spiritual realm. What is it that makes us relatable to God? If God was just something out there in space or in a different dimension, because we don't see him, what is it that makes us need God and want God and have a desire for God? What is it?
Well, we're a part of him, so it would be like missing a part, like missing your arm or your hand. So there's an inherent need for God because we're, a part of him.
It's true. So
and somehow I think that's why. Yeah, sorry.
Go ahead.
Nope, just think that's why people are seekers, because they feel they're missing something and they don't know that
Yeah,
it's
that's because
already.
that's exactly it. They have this innate need for God, so they seek for something. So
Who was it that said we all have a God-sized vacuum? Pascal?
yes, Pascal.
Mhm.
Didn't hear that.
Mankind has a God-sized vacuum within each man.
So the point that I'm trying to emphasize here is that which enables us to have a relationship with God is that we are just like our stomach is created to receive food, which when we don't get, hunger arises in us, which makes us intensely want that food. In the same exact way, that which draws us to God or makes us relatable to God or builds a relationship with God is that we are created as a hunger for God. That is our human nature. Our human nature is a want, a desire for, and a lack of everything that God is. Otherwise, we would have no relationship with God whatsoever because he's invisible, he's on another dimension, out of sight, out of mind. If we were not a hunger for God, there would be nothing in our lives that would attract us to God or that, like Nikki said, would make us seek God as something we lacked.
But isn't that so interesting? This group that Sherry follows on Facebook of atheists. I mean, they're saying they have no desire, no need, no hunger for God.
Yeah, well, it's
at that
unrecognized.
time I said, no, you guys spend a lot more time on God than a lot of Christians do.
Yeah, I would say they do have a hunger, they just don't acknowledge it.
Yeah, exactly. Human beings are created as a hunger for God. That is a fact of nature. Everybody is religious in their own way.
Yeah.
Even the woke people are religious.
Mhm.
And they're the atheists who deny that there's a God, but they still have a hunger for a higher dimension than they are. Something in them wants something beyond them. And so they have this intense, we all do, have this intense desire for something better than ourselves, something beyond ourselves, something like the stomach. The stomach wants something that is beyond itself in order to satiate its hunger pains, its hunger. And when food gets together with the stomach, what happens? We become unconscious of the hunger, and we call that peace, or we call that tranquility. Our hunger pains are
Satisfaction.
abated, like thirst. If you're thirsty and you've been walking through the desert for a few days and you got no water, when you drink water and quench your thirst, you now become unconscious of this need for water. And when you fill your stomach with good food, you become unconscious of food. In fact, you don't even want any more.
You're
The desire
satisfied.
for food has left you, and you become into this state of not only not needing anything, but not even desiring it anymore.
Mhm.
Now, this is exactly the two lives that we have. On the one side, we have our humanity, which is the want of God. The other life that is in us is the fullness of everything that we want, which is God. And when these two come together, we have what's called peace and joy and contentment and happiness and satisfaction and all of those descriptive adjectives that are summed up in the word shalom.
Mhm.
We are in a state of shalom. We're at peace.
Mhm.
We're unconscious of the need of God because our heart, which is the want of God, is full of God. And so we live in this state of fullness or fulfillment, or what's called in the Bible the glory of God.
Mm.
We've been glorified. We've been satiated. Our thirst has been quenched. And that's why Jesus referred to himself as the bread from heaven or the living water,
Amen.
is because he is that other life in us that satisfies the other life in us. And when these two lives are lived in union, in conscious togetherness, we are glorified, we are fulfilled, we are satiated, we're at peace. Does that make any sense?
Mm. Mm. Yeah.
So if we have our human life, which is the want of everything that God is, so it's the want of goodness, it's the want of righteousness, it's the want of wisdom, it's the want of desire, or it's the want of or a desire for you know, a knowledge of what I'm here for or why I'm here. All those things that are in God that are not in us, if those two lives become separated and we find ourselves just in the want of all those things, what is that called? That state of abject want.
Lost.
Lynn says lost. How else would you describe that state?
Sounds kind of lonely.
Lonely. Yes, it does. Well, the Bible uses the word evil because the real meaning of the word evil is chaos.
Yeah. Trouble. Yeah.
It's a hunger that eats us, it eats away at us and destroys us. That is what evil is. Evil is this destructive force. It's not just a destructive force, it's a self-destructive force. We become our own worst enemy.
Mm.
And we literally devour ourselves and anybody else that's around us.
Mm.
That's why Sherry was talking about these people, they get angry. Well,
Mm.
anger and wrath is an expression of this self-devouring spirit. And
Mm.
when that innate need for God is separated from God, who is the fulfillment of that need, then we end up in this devouring state of destructive chaos. And that is the root of all evil. That's where evil comes from. It comes from not getting what we were created to have. We were created for God, and when you rule God out, you end up in this all-consuming hunger of want for everything that is in God, which you now no longer have access to. So your heart, which is your spiritual stomach, your heart just starts to consume itself. And this is exactly what happens in the physical level. If you don't feed the stomach and satiate it and quieten the hunger, that stomach will consume the body. It will literally consume the body until there's no flesh left.
Mm.
And you will die because we are created physically as a hunger for food. And if that need is not met, we will die. Now, on the spiritual level, it's identical. We are created spiritually for a need, a want of, and a desire for God.
Mm.
And if that need is not met, for whatever reason, because of a belief system, mostly because of a belief system, because of fear or doubts or false teaching or whatever, and you're not informed that you have two lives, and you think you only have one life, then you're going to live in a self-consuming desire for something you will never, ever get. You will never be satisfied. And even if you turn all those desires on getting a better job and making $1 million and having 10 wives or 10 husbands or whatever it is you think will fulfill that want in you, you will end up at the end of it all with nothing.
Hmm.
Because you have not partaken of the actual food on the spiritual level that you were created to be fulfilled with. So, man without God is not a man. He's not human. He's subhuman. He's not even on the level of the animals, because the want in him is so infinite that if you take the fulfillment of that want away from him, he ends up lower than the animals.
Hmm.
He becomes a monster because he has a infinite hole inside him. Like Pascal said, every man has a vacuous want of God in them. And if you take God out of the picture, they are left in a self-consuming hell.
Yeah.
Which is
Why-
subhuman.
Why do
Not
they
only
look so happy, Sean? And that they're happy and they're millionaires and they travel all over. Gotta
well,
say.
it's true. I mean, we live in this physical matrix, which for a time we can so easily deceive ourselves and so easily be deceived by taking this hunger, which is a driving force, and pouring it into making money, becoming famous, traveling. You can expend that hunger, and it's like a drug addict. He can try different kinds of medications and street drugs that will quench his physical hunger, but in the end, it's all self-destructive because it does not give his body the nutrients that he needs. So in the end, he dies of alcoholics, for instance, dies of liver cirrhosis, or drug addicts die of malnutrition. And the rich and the famous, they commit suicide lots of times.
It's never
And
enough for an addict. Yeah, sorry.
exactly. It's never enough because it's not what we were created for the want of. And it's the same as feeding your stomach with heroin. You can get away with that for a while, and you can convince yourself that you're happy. But in the end, the lack of nutrition will definitely kill you. And for a human being, the lack of God, a fulfilling relationship with God, is going to be the death of you. And it's going to not be a nice death. It's going to be a death of grief and sorrow and regret and judgment and self-condemnation and guilt and shame and everything that comes cascading down on you when you finally realize, oh, I never found what I needed. I never found what I wanted. I never established a relationship with my spiritual food. And so here I am at whatever state of life this realization comes to me. I throw up my hands in despair and say, there's no solution to this. Man was, like Job said, born for trouble, as the sparks fly upward, he said. So, in other words, this life here on this planet is just meant to be a problem, and it's totally chaotic, and there's no purpose to it. There's no rhyme or reason. We're just here to survive at all costs, and if we have to take out a few other people in the meantime, that's just the way it is. We got to survive. Now, does that make sense that these two lives are created for each other? We are created as the absolute want of and lack of everything that is in God, and God is the fullness of everything that we lack. So when these two lives come together, they really create one life, which is this life called shalom, or peace, or goodness, or fulfillment, or whatever it is you can, there's 1,000 words maybe that describe the union life of the want with the fullness of that want. When they come together, they are actually one, because one swallows up the other one. And so there's only evidence of the one. So when man comes into correct relationship with God, which is called righteousness, right relationship, righteousness is that state in which all that we are in ourself, which is a lack of goodness, is united with all that is in God, which is the fullness of the goodness. When those two things unite, we have what's called
Life,
abundant life.
abundant life.
And that's what Jesus said he came to do, was to give us abundant life. Life on a higher level that cannot be disturbed. The life which Jesus himself lived. Now, how do we know he lived that way? Because he said, I don't act out of my own will. He says, I don't do anything on my own. I only do what I see my Father doing. He said, I don't speak out of my own want or my own desire or my own will. I only speak what the Father speaks. The words which I speak are his words. And then he went a step further and he said, if you've seen me, you've actually seen the Father, because we are one. Because he lived in this unified life where his human want as a human being was completely and totally satiated with the presence of his Father within him. And what the result of that was a unified life, which nobody could explain. Like Nicodemus came to Jesus and said, how do you do this? He said, we see that you must have come from God, but how are we supposed to live in this same dimension where you live? Because he said, you do things that no one else can do.
Sean, do you think that Jesus spoke to God directly, or it was an instant knowing?
Say it again. Do you think
that he communed, like spoke to God, or was it just an instant knowing? He didn't have to speak.
Well, I think he had a consciousness of what the absolute want in him was for, and he never wavered from being fed with that. He was just always in this state of satiation, hunger satiation, or thirst quenching. He never got thirsty, because when he'd say, the disciples said to him, well, where are you going? We got to eat. He said, I have food to eat that you don't seem to have a clue about. And when he was in the wilderness, the devil, after 40 days and 40 nights, the devil tempted him and said, well, you got to take care of your body. You should turn this rock into bread. So, you don't desecrate God's temple. And Jesus said to the devil, don't tempt God. Because he said, the angels are ministering to me all the time, because I'm feeding on the divine. So he had a consciousness of his need of the Father, but he never was tempted to turn and find that satisfaction for his inner want from anything on the earth plane. And that was the temptation that Adam and Eve were faced with in the garden. When the serpent came to them and said, oh, if you eat this fruit, it will make you wise. Well, that was one of the things that God was made to them, wisdom. And now Satan's saying, but you can find another source of it by eating this fruit. And besides, it's beautiful. And so you can find an appreciation for beauty if you eat this fruit. You don't have to find that in God. And so what Satan tempted them to do was to look for, they didn't find it, but they looked for the satisfaction of their infinite want of God in something that was on the created level. And that's why they died, because they starved to death spiritually. They started taking heroin instead of real food. And so it says their eyes were opened. It's like taking heroin, you know, they had an hallucination. And they realized, oh, we can be like God now. Well, they were a physical expression of God from the beginning of their createdness. And now they suddenly realized, oh, we can be like God. We can be smart like God. We can have a source of wisdom that's not found in God. And so now we can act independently of God and be smart and know good and evil, just like God did. And that's what the serpent had said to them. You will be like God, knowing good and evil. And it's true. They had this revelation, because it says their eyes were opened, and they had this revelation, this hallucination. Oh, we're smarter now. We know the difference between good and evil, and we didn't know that before. But the reason they now knew that was because they had literally died spiritually. They had died to this union life that the all in all that is in God was in them. So they were completely satiated. Now they turned from that and said, "Oh, we found another source over here. Thank you very much, God, but we'll get back to you on that. What we need from you." And they started living out of a created source of goodness.
So does that take back to Nicodemus?
Yeah, so Nicodemus was brought up in this whole context of separated thinking, which said, well, we know God is up in heaven, and that's what he said to Jesus. We know that you have come down from God because you seem to have this miraculous ability, which we other humans don't have. And Jesus, what did Jesus do? Jesus went right to the core of Nicodemus's question. He said to Nick, he said, unless you are born from above, you cannot perceive the kingdom of heaven. See, because Nicodemus, clearly, he gives it away when he responded to that question of Jesus, that statement of Jesus, he said, oh, you mean I have to go back into my mother's womb and start over? And Jesus said, oh, no, Nick, you're not going near enough, far back enough. You didn't start in your mother's womb, and that is your problem, is you actually think you started on a physical level. He said, and then he answered the question. He said, unless you are born of spirit and of the flesh, you cannot, there's no possible way you can enter the kingdom of heaven. In other words, if you don't know you started in God, how are you going to get back to God? Because your blindness that you started in your mother on a physical level is keeping you from entering into heaven, because you don't have a passport from there. You don't have a birth certificate from there. You think your birth certificate was on earth. He said, but if you knew your birth certificate was from heaven, you would have citizenship there and you'd have full rights to enter there. But because you don't know you came from heaven, you're cut off. You have no citizenship. You have no birthright. You have no birth certificate. You don't even know where heaven is. Even though it is within you, you have no clue about that because you've been deceived in your mind. And therefore, your separated mind, which says, I didn't come from God, I came from my mother. That's what keeps you out of heaven. That's what keeps you out of the kingdom of heaven. And then Jesus made it really clear when Nicodemus was getting confused, more confused, Jesus said, okay, let me put it another way. Only the one who descends from heaven can ascend to heaven. In other words, if you didn't come from there, there's no possible way you could go there because you have no consciousness of it. You have no awareness of it. But then he implied in the very first question that Nicodemus asked him, he said, unless you are born from above, you cannot perceive the kingdom of heaven. Now, Nicodemus, it was clear that Nicodemus had a desire for spiritual things. Otherwise, he would not have asked Jesus the question that he asked him. How is it that you do these things from another dimension? The fact that Nicodemus had a query in his mind and his understanding proved that he came from heaven. Otherwise, he would have had no desire to even ask for the question. He wouldn't have come to Jesus and said, well, what's different about you? How do you do these miracles? He wouldn't even have noticed that they were miracles. But because there was in him a question forming that said, well, what's the difference between you and us? How come you can do this and we can't? Jesus basically said, Nick, you wouldn't be asking me this if you had not been born in heaven. This is proof that you came from heaven. Now, the thing where this has been misinterpreted is we've been told that what Jesus said to Nicodemus was something he did not say. We've been told that Jesus said, Nick, the problem with you is you got to get yourself born again. Jesus never said that. Jesus never said to Nick, you got to get born again. He said, unless you be born from above, you cannot see the kingdom of heaven. You have no perception of it. You have no desire for it. You have no capacity to entertain the idea of heaven unless you were born from above. And that's where he basically said to Nick, because you're asking me this question, it's proof that you came from there. But you obviously do not know this.
Mm-hmm.
And that is your problem. And that's the answer to your problem. You must be born of spirit and of the flesh in order to be a participant in the kingdom of heaven. You have to know that you have a passport from heaven as well as from this world. You have a birth certificate here and there if you're going to walk in the kingdom of heaven on earth, because this kingdom of heaven on earth, you have to have dual citizenship. You have to be a citizen of heaven and a citizen of this earth. And Nick said, how can this be? In other words, he was just completely over his head. And Jesus said, Nick, what in the world are you doing teaching others if you don't have a clue what you're talking about?
That's kind of
Literally
unfair.
said, what's that?
I said that was unfair.
Well, he basically said, and you call yourself a teacher of
Yeah, but
spirituality? Nick was a Pharisee. He was a Pharisee of Pharisees. He was the educated elite educators of the spiritual. And Jesus said, you better give up your credentials because you have no idea what you're talking about.
who did though?
No, well, exactly. Who did? And that is
I
why
just
Jesus
think
came.
that was unnecessary.
Well, Nicodemus needed a wake-up call because, he considered himself a teacher and a know-it-all. And he needed a 2x4 across the side of the head to start over in kindergarten and start relearning because he didn't know enough to be a teacher.
But he was also humble enough to seek Jesus out and to seek answers.
Yes, so he would not have been afraid of starting in kindergarten and learning over. Which is what Jesus said, unless you become as little children, you cannot by any means enter the kingdom of heaven, because you need a total re-education, just like what they're doing to Jordan Peterson. They're telling me he has to get re-educated in order to go on social media. Well,
What's
Jesus
up with
is saying
that?
the same thing. What's that?
What's up with that?
Oh, that's just the
Okay, we
woke.
can talk about that after. Yeah.
Yeah, they're taking his license as a psychologist away unless he becomes re-educated.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, Jesus basically says the same thing. If you're going to enter the kingdom of heaven, you must become as little children. It's time to go back to kindergarten and start over with real learning, real education. Number one, You have to know where you came from. Now, even in the Old Testament, David knew this. David said in Psalm 139, "The Lord has knit me together in my mother's womb." In other words, David knew that heaven was inside his mother and that God was in his mother knitting him together. And this is what Nicodemus didn't know. He did not know that he came from heaven. And who of us does know this until we are taught of the Spirit? It says that the Spirit of God has been shed abroad in our hearts, crying, Abba, Father. In other words, the Spirit of God is come for one purpose, to tell us on the inside, you came from God. God is your Father. God is your Abba. He's your daddy. That's the number one thing the Spirit does. As soon as we awaken to the Spirit of God, the number one lesson in the kindergarten is God is your Father. Abba, Father. You have a right to cry out, God is my daddy. And unless we start there, we have no idea who we are. We don't know where we came from, and we certainly do not know who we are. Now, Jesus himself said, I will build my ecclesia, my church, the word ecclesia. And he said, the gates of hell will not prevail. Once my church is built, look out, gates of hell, because you're not going to stand up. You will not be able to resist my church, my ecclesia. Now, if you look at the word ecclesia, it tells the whole story. It's a compound word, kaleo, ecclesia. It's conjugated as ecclesia, but the word ecclesia is kaleo. It means to name, and the word ek means originating from. So the ecclesia, the true church that Jesus has built, are those who are named after their origin. They know who their dad is. They know where they came from. That's what the church is. It's not people who call themselves Christians. It's people who know that God is their Father. And those, the gates of hell are terrified of those people. And the gates of hell will fold when push comes to shove. Jesus said, when I get my church built, the gates of hell are going to fold. Now, how many times in church have you ever been told that you originated in God?
Never
If you
heard
haven't, then there is
Never heard it.
no surprise why we are where we are and where Nicodemus was when he met Jesus, because all his educators had never once told him this. Jesus was the first person he had ever met who told him where he came from.
Mhm. By the way, while we're on the topic, I looked up the word born again, that's translated that. It does mean born from above, but it literally means descent. We're descended from God. And it says in Ecclesiastes, when we die and the body goes to the dust, the spirit returns to the one who gave it.
Amen.
There you go.
Amen.
Very
We
important.
always go back to our origin.
Sure we go.
And if we think we originated on a physical level in our mother's womb because of the fertilization of our father's sperm, and we believe that we started here on earth, the ability to imagine or understand where we came from is completely removed from us. We have no way of comprehending the kingdom of heaven. If we do not know, well, let's put it this way, once we know that we came out of the womb of God, then according to nature and how nature works, we always inherit the DNA of our parents. And we would know that we have a divine DNA within us. But we are told, oh no, you started here on earth and you're a spawn of the devil and you're as evil to the core as you can ever be. And somehow you got to get imported into you another DNA sperm that's going to rechange your DNA so you can go to heaven someday. I mean, that sounds like a Frankenstein miracle. But you got to stick two things together that were never together before.
Yeah.
Genetics is inborn. It's not, I mean, this is what Fauci's been trying to do, is use a vaccine to import foreign DNA to change the human genome.
Yeah.
And God does not work that way. God works by nature, by innate, inherited nature. He doesn't come along and infuse something foreign into you and turn you into one of his children.
So, it's the Celtics, isn't it, that
Believe children are born good.
yeah, they believe the opposite, and they always teach their children the opposite, that they came from God, right?
Yes.
So how did the Celtic people get that teaching? Or how did they keep from getting polluted into the other teaching?
Well, they didn't. The Celts, this group of Celts who believed that, went from, you know, they believed that God was present in the child and needed to be nurtured in the child. And that's what Peter says, or pardon me, James said. Peter said it also, but James said, receive with meekness the inborn, innate logos of God, which alone can save your soul.
Mhm.
Now that is not taught anymore. Very, very often. It's taught is you need to get a Fauci, a vaccination in order to become born of God. You need to get something injected into you from outside of you because you're evil by to the core. And so you need an infusion of God. So God's going to give you a vaccination to import his DNA into you. That's not what Peter said either. Peter said, born again. There's the word that Kent used. Born again, not of corruptible seed. And the word seed there is the word sperm.
Mm.
Born again, not of corruptible seed, but of incorruptible seed. That Logos who lives and abides eternally. Now, if that Logos didn't abide in you from the day you were conceived, then it did not abide in you eternally.
Mm.
And if you are taught that you were born without that seed of divine nature in you, you've been lied to. And you have not been taught the Bible. Because the Bible says that that innate, incorruptible seed, which can only be the seed of God, because that's the only thing that can't be corrupted, is eternally in you. From the very beginning, you had this eternal word in you.
Hmm.
So the question then that comes up is, okay, well, what happened with Adam when Adam and Eve, and they ate this fruit, and we fell into this distorted perception of life that we only had one life and we had to do our best? How is it that some people, you see this throughout the Old Testament, you see the prophets and people like David and Samuel, and there was these people all throughout the Old Testament. They seemed to know that God was in them. How did they figure this out? How did they come to this awakening, this revelation that they were actually a mouthpiece? The prophets knew they were a mouthpiece of God. They knew that when they opened their mouth, God was talking. And other people around them seemed to accept that as a fact. And yet, in our day, supposedly, after the crucifixion and death and resurrection of Jesus, we seem to be in a greater want than some of those Old Testament dudes were. Because, I mean, you look at Elijah's life. Elijah, I think he did 9 miracles that are recorded in the in his book. of the account of him, and Elisha, who was his successor, actually did exactly twice as many miracles as Elijah did. Well, we're supposed to be living in the miraculous. What happened to us? Where's the record of the things that God has showed up in our lives and miraculously done that have been recorded in the annals of history, like Elisha and Elijah? 4,000 years down the road, we're still reading about their accounts. And we say, oh, they were Old Testament dudes, you know, they never had the revelation we had. Well, I'd like to have the revelation they had.
Look how much
Because-
interference, though, Sean. I'm sorry to cut you off. Look how much interference we have, though. Computers, cell phones, Wi-Fi. Like, we're bombarded.
Oh, I agree.
They weren't.
I agree. But all our information, all our knowledge, and all our wisdom, and all our ability to make good choices comes from a natural source. We are not depending on a supernatural source for that. It's all on the internet. You know, if you want to look something, you just ask Siri, and Siri will be your wisdom for you. And we have substituted human knowledge, and we've accumulated enough of this now that we can, you know, we can depend on it and put our trust in it, all at the expense of leaning on God. Like it says in Proverbs, lean not on human understanding, but lean on God for your understanding and for your wisdom and for your choice, the decisions that have to be made in your life. But we got Siri now. Who needs God? Who needs God?
Guilty. Siri and I are going out with one another. Don't tell Lauren.
It's because you've got a sassy scarf on there.
There you go. That's right. Siri really likes me because of my scarf. Is that what you're saying?
Well, this is the really serious matter when it comes to this twofold life. Because if we are created with a twofold life, one that is the abject want of the other one, and we do not turn to the one who is the fullness of that life which this life wants, we are going to end up in a serious conflict at some point in our life. We are going to crash and burn. There is no question. Because if you withhold the fuel from something that's flying, that thing is going to fly, it's going to crash. If you don't put enough fuel in an airplane, it's going to come down. And we were created to fly. We were created to walk in the spirit, to be above and in dominion over this earth. And if we make an attempt to do that without the proper fuel in the tank, you can bet on it, we're going to crash. Now, I think every one of us here would easily admit that there has been a time in our life when we have actually done that, if not more than one time, when we've actually crashed and burned. Well, here's the reason. It's very simple. It's kindergarten simple. It is that we have a twofold life. And if we are deceived into thinking we only have one life, then we will ignore the other life to our detriment and to our destruction. Jesus said, no man can serve two masters. He will either love one or hate the other. He will hold to one and despise the other one. So whatever we focus our desires on will consume us in the end. And we will hold to that. And once we've established ourselves in the way the world thinks and the way the world believes and the way the world acts and speaks, it is very difficult to do a paradigm shift, to come out of all that dependency and all that trust and all that confidence and all that fulfillment in a false system of believing and understanding and trusting, and trade it in for a different one and say, okay, I'm only going to trust Christ in me now. Well, all I can say is good luck. Because the truth of the matter is, we're going to have to give up one in order to have the other. And that might not be quite as easy as we think it is. And that's why the Bible talks about, Jesus said, he who follows me, if you're going to actually follow me and pay attention to me and live the life I lived in total dependence on my Father and only doing what I see him doing and only saying what he says, if you're going to do that to me and follow me in that same role, you will have to take up your cross every single day. Now, when Jesus took up his cross, what did that symbolize? It basically was the end of the road for life as he had been living it up until that point. He didn't have to worry about his mortgage payment after that. He didn't have to worry about his car payments or his wife, or if he had one. Anyway, anybody who takes up the cross means that you are, at that point, abandoning everything that you have learned up until that point. You are simply turning your whole your whole life away from all that you depended upon, and you are facing another life altogether. So that is why Jesus said, he who follows me. If anybody's interested in actually, modeling their life after mine, or following me, number one, they have to take up their cross daily, deny themselves. Now, the word deny literally means disown. So you have to disown the whole identity that the world has given to you. And then it says, take up your cross daily, deny self, and follow me. In other words, he did not say, follow my book, or he did not say, read my archives, or read the autobiographies that were written about me, and do your best. He said, follow me. In other words, pay attention to what I'm saying in your heart. Now, that's a complete paradigm shift. No more Siri. Sorry, Kent. No more depending on those people that have exalted themselves in my life, like professors or
Your wife.
wise people or doctors or those icons in our culture that we look to and depend on and trust in to give us the answers of life. Jesus said, that's all out the window now. Now you got to follow me. If you're ever actually going to come after me and be my disciple, number one, take up the cross. Write off everything in your past. Number two, deny the identity that you have. Deny yourself. Disown everything. And actually pay attention to me and everything I'm telling you in your heart. Well, that's a paradigm shift. That's basically a death and resurrection. It's a dying to the life I've lived up until this point, and it's being raised into another life. And I was just starting over from kindergarten and relearning what life is on planet Earth. It's not an intellectual decision I make. Say, oh, yeah, I can see that the way I've been living doesn't work that well. So, okay, I'm going to decide to be a disciple of Jesus. I'm following Jesus from today on. Okay, that's a good start, but you better buckle your seatbelt because the cross is coming and the self-denial is going to be number one. And the following a whole different paradigm of information input is going to be the rule of your life from here on out. Now, That's kind of what Jesus said when he told the parable of the guy who found the pearl in the field and he hid it. And then he said, I am going to buy this thing. Now, the pearl, of course, was the discovery of Jesus hidden in his own heart, the field of his own soul. But what was the price he had to pay for it?
Give up everything.
He had to sell everything that he had.
Yeah. Right,
He
right.
had to give it all up. And that is the price of being a disciple. You got to sell the farm.
Mm.
You got to sell everything. And then by that, I mean, I'm not talking about stuff. I'm
Mm.
talking about dependencies, trust issues, everything that you believe in and trust on and lean on and look to, out the window. Gone.
Because,
over.
sorry, Sean, we want immediate gratification.
Yeah, we want an injection.
Yeah,
We want a Fauci vaccine.
yeah. I want to
It'll
know
change
right
our-
now I've done this. Yeah.
It'll change our DNA while we're sleeping. Yeah, we're you're right. We're living in an instantaneous world where we want the answer today. Well, we want it yesterday, actually.
Yeah.
And Jesus said, okay, if you're really going to follow me, it's going to cost you everything. It's going to cost you absolutely everything. Not on the outside, on the inside. It's going to cost you your whole life. And
But
what
why
you
do we
think
think
life
that's
is.
I'm sorry, I keep cutting you off, but
Yeah, go ahead.
why do we think that it's all going to be bad? You know, bad things are going to
Well,
happen, and I'm just, I'm out in the street, and yeah, my family hates me.
Well, the one
Wow,
thing
I'm
that
so
we
sorry, Erica.
What'd you say?
I said I'm so sorry.
Yeah, they don't
the
get
one
what.
thing that we humans fear the most is the unknown.
Hmm.
And that's why it's so terrifying, is because we just think, well, this is craziness. You're asking me to give up everything I know for something I don't know at all? Yep, that's it. That's what's required. But there's one thing that will bear witness to the truth. And that is, if there is a seed of divinity in our heart, then we will not be able to walk away from it. Once we have been awakened to the fact and the reality that there are two lives in every human, and one of them has been suppressed and buried. Like Paul said, we have this treasure in earthen vessels, that the power may be of God and not of our lives. In other words, life isn't we living it, life is God living it. That the power may be of God. The power to live life is from God, not from us. Paul says we have this treasure that's hidden in our earthen soul and earthen bodies and souls, that we may understand that the power to live life is not from us, it's from the God in us.
Yeah.
He also said to the Colossians, he said, this mystery, this secret that's been hidden for generations and from ages past, he said, God is now taking the lid off of this thing and explaining it in detail to everybody. Christ is in you as your one and only hope of being glorified. And as we said, being glorified is being satiated, having that inner hunger for the infinite God, being absolutely and totally satisfied, quenched, and satiated. Paul said that the hope of that is Christ in you. He didn't say Christ, you got to get Christ into you. He said the mystery is the fact that Christ is in you, and that fact has been hidden for ages and from generations, but is now being revealed. to us in this very day, Paul said. So here we are standing in this revelation that we have twofold life, that God has been in us since the day we were conceived, waiting for, like a seed, waiting for that perfect timing in the spring when the seed that is there planted feels the warmth of the sun and the moisture of the ground, and the power that's in the sun penetrates through into the soil and starts to warm that seed and draw the life that's hidden in that seed and pull it back into visibility, pull it back into its growth state.
Mhm.
And that's where we are today. We are in this state where Jesus, who is like the sun in the heavens, has come to pull that divine life that's hidden inside our soul, to pull it out, to draw it back into its living, expressed state in our humanity, so that we become expressions of the divine.
Mhm.
That God takes a hold of our whole faculties and our whole soul and spirit and body, and we love God with our whole body, soul, spirit, and strength. In other words, we don't prostitute our need and our want and our lack on carnal things, on earthly things, on things of this dimension, because there is nothing in this dimension that will begin to really satisfy that infinite want that we are created to be. We can't, there's no fix for that. There is no fix for that except God. He's the only thing that will fix that want. And if we live in the ignorance of that fact, that God is the only fix, we will learn the hard way,
Mhm.
which we all do.
Yeah.
Until we become convinced that God only is my hope of glory, my hope of satisfaction, my hope of fulfillment, my hope of being a real human. And Jesus was the only real human. Well, Adam was. But Jesus came forth. It's interesting that God said, the scripture says, in the fullness of time, God sent forth his son. He didn't say he sent him down, he sent him forth. He came from where? Where did he come from?
From each of us.
He came out of his mother's womb.
Yeah, he
He
became
was
one of us.
in
Yeah.
there. He came from the inside out. And so God sent forth his son from the inside dimension, because the inside world of spirit, although it is expressed and explained and displayed through the heavens and the universe around us, it's actually on the inside, and it's infinitely bigger than the galaxy around us. And that inside kingdom is infinite. And Jesus came from the inside out. He was on the inside of each one of us, but he came, like Kent said, he came out of his mother's womb as a illustration of coming out of each one of us. He came out of the inside, and he said, I've been on the inside all this time, and you ignored me, and you didn't know I was there, so I'm coming on the outside to get your attention, to show you that I'm on the inside, because I'm really on the inside. And that's where you will meet me. Remember when he came to the Pharisees? Or the Pharisees came to him, they're arguing with him about his theology. And Jesus said, you know, you guys, you search the scriptures because you think that you will find eternal life in that book. But he said, you refuse to come to me. Now, come on, Jesus. Give them some credit. They got off their high seats in the synagogue and actually in the Sanhedrin and came out here to question you. And they're in your face. Now, answer the question. And Jesus said, you refuse to come to me where I can actually give you life, because he says, I'm the only one that can give you life. And he said to them, you have never heard God's voice, not even once. And his word has no place in you. and you do not even know the form which he shows up in. In other words, you're standing here in front of me and you do not know who I am. You do not know that I am the Christ of God. You do not know that God shows up on the human plane as a human being. You have no idea what form he takes, because he is the formless God. So what form does he take? It looks exactly like you and I. That's the form he takes. And that's what Jesus said to the Pharisees. You won't come to me where I can actually give you life, which is in your heart, in that internal kingdom of heaven. And you come out here in the flesh and you think you're going to get something out of a book? Seriously? You actually think that that hunger and thirst for God is going to be fed from a book? It's not going to happen. He said that book is merely a witness. It testifies to where you can actually find me. It's a treasure map to lead you to the treasure which is in you. And he said, you've never once heard me speak. Never heard God once. And neither is his word have any place in your heart. And that's why you're clueless. You don't even know what God looks like when he shows up on this plane. Anyway, it's 8 o'clock.
I gotta ask you a
And
question.
I'm done most of
You
the time.
called
Yeah,
it the twofold aspect of life, or what did you call it at the beginning?
man has a twofold life.
Okay, so one, it's like two sides of a coin, right?
Yes.
One is dark and you can't see it, what's going on one side, and one is light and you can see on the other side. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, that is exactly another illustration of this twofold life,
Okay.
is light and darkness. This want of God, the want of the infinite, which is our natural human life, is equivalent to darkness. It's the same as darkness. We
Right.
are in our created soul, we are simply darkness.
There we go.
And God, the other side of that coin, is God, who is light. God is light, and in him there is no darkness. So because we are darkness, and God is light, and in whom there is no darkness, we are not God.
Right, there we go.
We are darkness. But darkness is a want of light. That's exactly what darkness is. It's the want of light. Now you can prove that any night in your house when it's dark outside. If you come into a dark room and you flip the light on and you sit there for an hour and then you flip the light off, what happens to all that light that's been streaming into the room for the hour that you've been in there? You say, well, I should have at least a little bit of a glow for a few minutes, but when I turn the light off, but instantaneously, it's gone. Where did it go?
Into the refrigerator.
Yeah, Lynn says into the refrigerator. So if you open the door, you'll see it's in there. No,
Well, she's not
the
wrong.
light is swallowed up constantly by the darkness. So as long as you keep the light switch on, the light streams into the room and it's constantly being eaten up by the light. So darkness is a hunger for light. It eats it constantly. And that is a perfect picture of our humanity. We are constantly consuming the light of God. And that's why we have to be constantly fed by the light in order to be seen as light. Because if we stop even for 1 second partaking of the light, we end up just like the room with the light turned off. We become a black hole. And that black hole, left to itself, is the mother of all evil. It gives birth to everything degenerate and corrupted and wicked and destructive. It is the mother of all evil. And that's what we become without God. So these people on the internet with Sherry who deny God, they're not doing themselves a very good service. They are going to be swallowed up in their own darkness. They're going to end up in hell that they themselves created. God did not create hell. We did. And we do on a regular, ongoing basis whenever
Exactly.
we don't stay turned to the light. We are our own hell makers. God does not throw anybody in hell.
And that's another topic for another day. Hell.
Yeah. Hell, great word. Hades in the Greek. Hades. Ha is absolute negative. Des is the conjugated form of the word eido, which means to see, to perceive.
So not
Ha is the negative form of seeing, which is blindness.
Here we go.
Hell is not being able to see,
Yeah, I was
which
going
is
to
what
say,
happens. Darkness takes your sight away. If you do not look to the light, your darkness will steal your sight. You will end up in the darkness of hell. Hades. Hades, it's pronounced in our English, Hades.
All right.
Hades is not being able to see.
It is 8 o'clock, so 9 o'clock here in Alberta.
And is it past your bedtime?
Yeah, so I'm afraid I'm becoming a senior that needs to go to bed.
You're looking sleepy. Hey, Sean, can I talk to you after, please?
You bet. Yeah.
I'll leave you on, no
And
problem.
Lynn.
I'll just turn this off. Are we done for now? Did you want to?
Yeah, you can
We are done. Good
Okay.
night, everybody.
D2 bus.
Bye.
Good night. Good night. God bless.
Good night. God bless.
Okay.
Bye, Hans.
I'll let you guys have your. Oh, there goes Hans.
It's
And-
nothing, you know. I just wondered how you went with your Zoom call with the Kootenai people about your time in England.
Oh, yeah. Good question. Yeah, we should give an update on that. From my point of view, I think it went very well. I felt a real freedom in the spirit, and I didn't feel any pushback or anybody choking on what I was sharing. So that's good.
And so how did they find you,
It
Sean?
went on for 3 hours.
Say
I'm
again.
not following. What are we talking about?
Oh, last Saturday, or no, yeah, it was last Saturday.
Yeah, on Saturday.
Lynn and I had gone over to Nelson to stay with some friends the week before, and we met a couple over there who were Christians, because the people we were staying with weren't Christians, and they introduced us to their landlords, actually. And they were so excited to meet some more Christians that they asked if we would share on their Saturday get-together. They have a Saturday gathering. So we had a Zoom call, and we talked to them. We were online for over 3 hours.
He talked to them.
Nelson is kind of a dark place.
It's all that pot.
Yeah, Nelson
there's a
Nelson
lot of
has
pot.
its own culture, that's for sure.
Yeah.
I don't know if it's a pot. It's something else.
Well, the natives wouldn't live there because it's on a highly crystal bed of something, and they never live
Oh.
there. They pass through, but they wouldn't live there. So I've heard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's a real New Age center now.
Yeah. And
guess-
oh, sorry.
I guess those New Agers think they're getting some input from the crystal bed there.
Yeah, like Sedona.
Yeah, exactly.
And so England was after France. You had the episode in France with Africa, and so England was after that. Yeah, and you were very sick, right?
Yeah,
Right.
yeah. So he shared all that happened to him. They actually recorded it, and I've asked her if she can send us a USB with it on, because it's quite long. She can't send it over Messenger or anything, I guess.
Yeah, they recorded it to their hard
Yeah.
drive on their computer.
But it would be great if we can get a copy. We'll share it with you guys, because it's just so powerful. Every time I hear it,
You're lovely. Yeah.
I'm blessed.
Yeah. Is this
It's nice to have it consecutive. It's nice to have it from beginning to end Well, there were maybe a couple things that you left out, but I mean, 3 hours, that was enough time to really
Hmm.
talk about what God did through that whole time.
Was this some part of it?
Yeah, they had asked me, what's that?
Sorry, you shared with me at one time that there was a curse, something about water,
Yeah,
and the
right,
woman came
right.
up and said, "There's a curse about the water." So the man had cursed you about the water. Now, was this the French guy or an African?
He was an African, yeah.
He was an African bishop.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds more
Yeah,
like a
that's
warlock
what they
than a
wanted me to
bishop.
share with the group.
Yeah.
Say that again, kid?
I think he was more of a warlock than a bishop.
Yeah, but
He
he
cursed you,
was
right?
yeah, he was a bishop in the church.
So you found this out in England that this had happened, like he'd done something to you about the water, and then this Christian
Yeah,
woman found that out. Yeah.
yeah, right.
Well, that's what we were talking about tonight, because she was obviously listening in the spirit, because she knew nothing about the fact that he'd been in Africa and
Yeah.
that he was in charge of water resource projects. So it was definitely a divine revelation that she got
Mhm.
when she was praying for him. And then she just pointed her finger at him and said, "In the name of Jesus,
Mm-hmm.
you release this man." And
Mhm.
that's when all hell broke loose.
In what way?
Well, he was
He
thrown out of
found
the
his
chair he
finger.
was sitting in,
Oh.
for starters, and
Yeah,
thrown around the room as they prayed.
it went
Mm.
on for about it went on for months, like weeks and months after that.
So like you were manifesting a demon that had been placed on you? Was
Well,
it?
I just lived in a dimension of poltergeist,
Mm.
crazy stuff would happen to me.
Have you written a book about that?
I have. I've written it down.
Yeah, he hasn't finished it. Started it several years ago, and then he put it out to a few people asking for comments, and they got back to him with the comments, and he hasn't finished incorporating those because it was good for him to see where he wasn't making it clear and they perceived something other than what he was trying to get across. So
Well,
he was
people
going
get
to go back.
scared. They get scared about that stuff. They don't want to talk about it in church. I said to my friend, I said, "Aren't you going to talk about this?" She goes, "No, we don't want to." I'm sorry, I'm cutting you off. We don't want to scare away our
Yeah.
people. I was like, well,
Yeah.
Yeah, but if we don't start to wake up and hear in the spirit and be free to respond,
yeah.
the church is going to continue to dry up.
Yeah, I mean that's pretty much the basis why I ended up where I did, is because
Mhm.
I'd been brought up in a religious belief that had no ability to recognize or understand the spirit dimension. I intellectually believe the Bible talked about deliverances and prayer for healing and stuff like this, but experientially, I had never been close to it. Didn't have a clue. So when it happened to me, I was just like broadsided. Never. In fact, I told the lady who was praying for me, I don't believe in that stuff. Can't affect me. I don't believe in it.
Mhm. So you never felt it at all when he was doing all that mojo on you. You never felt it.
Oh no, the bishop, I never had a clue he did. It
Mhm.
literally after I had about 4 or 5 different occasions when God said to me, "Wake up, will ya? This is
Mhm.
what's going on." And I just kept saying, no, that's just bumbo jumbo. I don't believe that. And finally, God had to hit me over the head with a 2x4. Like, will you please wake up?
Mhm.
We are living in a spiritual dimension that is under the influence of very dark forces. You
Yeah.
need to be awake.
Yeah.
But it was very inspiring after he had shared with them that day. we had asked the couple we met to pray for JP as well, because he had just been taken to the hospital while we were driving home from the Kootenays. And it's like she took everything that Sean had shared that was revealed to him, and she just was praying with so much power and insight. For JP, she texted us a couple of his prayers, and I thought, wow, she got it. She's just running with it.
Well,
It's really powerful.
and I think they've been operating in that for a while, and I think
Yeah.
this was just a witness and a confirmation that they were on the right track.
And a picture, really vivid picture for them to see. Yeah.
Yeah, it was interesting. Like I say, I felt very free. There are times when I have shared that story where I've been very reluctant to say it and regretted saying it. But this was not one of those times.
Mm-hmm.
And then how long were you in England? Because you were on your deathbed, weren't you? Wasn't you were
I
very-
was. I left Africa in a wheelchair and got on the plane, and somebody put me on the plane and somebody got me off on the other end. I went straight to the hospital. I was there for 3 weeks. And then I went to this convalescent home for 3 to 4 months where I recovered. Got my life back. Well, I wouldn't say I got my life back. I got a different life. I never got
And
the
do you
same
think
one
that
back.
was do you think that was part of the curse from the guy in the water, or is it something else?
Yeah. Yeah. And
I don't know.
hopefully we'll get the recording, Nikki, and be able to send it to you, because then
Yeah.
after that, he explains the whole scenario of how God revealed to him exactly what had happened. So he was just traveling around England and going to visit a friend in Ireland, and somebody handed him, well, he had a dream. He had a really vivid dream of somebody trying to murder him. And in the dream, it started out being a man from Three Hills, his hometown he grew up in. And Sean kept saying, but you know me, it's me. Why are you trying to kill me? And then he morphed, and it was this bishop. So God had revealed to Sean who it was in that dream. And then one of the people there in Ireland handed Sean a newspaper and showed him this article. And he said, do you know this guy? And it was the article saying that bishop had been murdered. And what God had told Sean before he went back to Africa to close down the projects was, don't touch that man, don't go near that man. Vengeance is mine, I will repay, says the Lord. So Sean didn't talk to the bishop at all, just closed the project down, left all the equipment there and everything. Anyway, it was when he was in Ireland, after he'd been through that Anglican convalescent home, he saw this article in the paper that the bishop had been murdered. And yeah, so if we can get that recording, it goes through the whole scenario.
Yeah, they asked me if I would share my testimony, and I said, you got a couple hours? There's
Yeah.
no way you can spend an hour. It's rather complicated or like detailed. It took over a year, a period of a year. And a lot of things happened in that year.
That's your podcast, Sean. I'll see you. We're gonna talk about the nitty gritty, because I've talked to you, and sorry to cut you off again. I always feel like I'm cutting you off, but just I've done a lot of psychedelics, with shamans, and man, it's the devil's playground. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then other people I see, they've done ayahuasca and they have this great big giant revelation with God. I never had that. I don't think women are meant to do that sort of stuff. So anyway, yeah.
Well, it's easy to be deceived, that is for sure.
Yes. Yeah.
Because there are, like Paul said, there are a lot of voices in the spirit world, and they all have an agenda. So we can easily be deceived. Anyway, we were created to be in union with the Holy Spirit, with the Spirit of Jesus, as our guide, as our comforter, as our director, as our shepherd. And if we substitute anything for that, we're asking for some serious, departures. So we got to stay on the track, on the beam, homed in on the God who lives inside us. He's at no distance. Paul clearly said, this God that he said to the idol worshiper, this God whom you're worshiping is at no distance to any one of you. You are all God's offspring, he told these idol worshippers downtown Athens on Mars Hill there. He said, you're at no distance to this God. And you live and move and have your being in him. He's not difficult to find if you'll look for him in the right place. And he said, God orchestrates the events of your whole life for one purpose, in order to motivate you to seek this God and find him, because he's at no distance to you. Now, how do you define no distance? That's closer than anything you can measure. And yet, Paul said, he's close to you. And in Romans chapter 10, he said, this Christ whom you're seeking is already in you. He's in your mouth and in your heart. He's at no distance to you. He said, don't say in your heart, who's going to go up to heaven to find this Christ, or who's going to go down to hell to bring him back. He said, this Christ you're looking for he's already in you. He's in your heart and in your mouth. If you'll just let him out, you will be saved. He said, if you agree with him, the word he used was homologeo, say the same thing he's saying. If you just let the Spirit in you use your mouth, that's your salvation. That will save you from all the chaos.
And you knew this before
But
you got sick and before you went to Africa? Sorry, I'm not questioning you. No.
I did not. I was a dyed-in-the-wool. I was a dyed-in-the-wool evangelical. I believed everything I was told.
Mhm.
That God was up in heaven and Jesus was going to come back someday. And until he come back, we have to do our best. Nobody ever told me Jesus had already come back.
And so you found that in England while you were sick?
Yeah, I sure did. I sure did. He showed up and I still wouldn't believe it. I met him face to face, and there was so much evangelical resistance in my belief system that I couldn't even believe it when he showed up. It was just like, nope, 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 nope. This isn't biblical. This isn't true. This can't be happening. This is no. This is demonic.
And what about you, Lynn? Because you were obviously there. Were you like evangelical?
I wasn't there to that. That's
Sorry?
before I met him.
Oh.
I wasn't there. That was where we met.
Oh.
Yeah.
That was the year before we met. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, but where we lived in Uganda, there was a shaman right behind us. So we heard you've probably heard me mention that, but that was a different guy.
Because they believe, but then they got the shaman in the back pocket, right? Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Well, in Uganda, when somebody dies, there's two funerals. There's the Anglican funeral, the Church of Uganda, and then there's the real funeral, that the shaman does.
Wow.
Yeah.
And so would you go
Yeah,
back?
interesting.
Sorry?
They have a very interesting belief that when their ancestors die, they go back to the beginning.
There's go ahead. That's different than what I thought you were going to say.
So their ancestors are all around them.
Yeah.
And
the near dead. If they died recently, they call them the near dead because they're still in their midst.
Yeah, they're still interacting in the midst, and so they have to be consulted. Of course, they have to be considered in the village decision making, and because they still have a say. Anyway, the Bible talks about we are surrounded by a cloud of witnesses.
Mm.
So it's not such a foreign belief.
Yeah. And even here in North America, there's countless people that talk about a loved one that died, and they sense their presence still, or butterfly flies by and they just know that's the spirit of the person or something. You hear people say these things all the time, even in our culture.
Well, that book
What is that, Lynn? That's not biblical, right? It's funny because I was talking about a girl that I worked with, and she was a native girl, and she said, I'm going to go get clean, I'm doing this, and she did heroin on a beautiful sunny day, and she died. And so the other girl that we were all friends, she said, yeah, her spirit, she came to me. And I'm like, I was thinking about that today. Is that biblical? Like, where is she, spirit? Does God talk about that? Or what is that?
Yeah.
That's a native belief, she's floating around.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think these things happen.
I
think they happen whether they're, we have that belief that they have, that we should believe in that. I don't think that's true, but I think some people have a hard time. Well, it takes them some time to exit completely from this dimension. Because I know people.
I'm sorry.
I know people who have been visited by people who have died and have left a message. I mean, it happens a lot. And I don't doubt that. I don't think they're making it up. I think these things really happen.
So I don't know if there's an example in scripture. I can't think of one.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely are. We are living on two different planes. We have an existence in a spiritual dimension, and we have an existence in the physical dimension. And these two dimensions are integrated, they're overlapping, they're parallel. But the unseen, the invisible dimension it doesn't have dimensions that we have here, like in time and space. But it's real. No question about it.
Well, my fear is that I'm going to die and I'll be sidetracked and I won't get to heaven. What do you think?
Oh, really?
Are you Catholic?
Well, you have a homing beam.
What'd you say, Sherry?
Are you Catholic?
I asked her if she's Catholic.
I don't know anything about Catholicism.
You'll definitely get sidetracked then.
Please don't.
Well, we have a homing beam. I say, Nikki, you have a homing beam inside you. Will take you to the right place.
Amen.
You cannot get separated from the God who is the essence of your life. Like the verse that Kent read, God gives the Spirit and the Spirit returns to God who gave it. It's not like
you don't have an option.
Spirit's gonna wander around and say, oh, I don't know where I came from. No, the Spirit in you knows where it came from.
It's a fear. I'm sorry.
But it's crazy the fears we have. And it's just crazy. And these fears are in the back of our mind, influencing our whole life.
Yeah.
Said you grew up with the fear that you would blaspheme the Holy Spirit, the one unforgivable sin. And that just stressed you out your whole life.
Yeah, I was living on the edge thinking it might happen. Anyway, and it actually did happen to me. I went over the edge. I mean, I'd lived on the edge for most of my life, and then I went over and I realized, uh-oh, I have done it. The unforgivable sin. I have already There's no way back now. And God had a very good laugh about that.
True. Yeah. You're sinking lower, husband.
Seriously, he laughed so hard that it just shook me awake. So
Good.
I don't think there's any validity to all of these fears we have, that we're going to get lost, or, Jesus is the good shepherd, and he says he leaves the 99 and he gets the last one. So if you're the last one, Nikki, he's going to get you.
Thank you. It's funny. It's exactly right. The fears. I'm like, why am I thinking about all this? It's like all of a sudden, it's like, I'm talking to the Holy Spirit and Jesus, and the last word I just say Jesus. And so it's like all this stuff, all these fears are coming out, and just like, oh, I never knew that I believed that. And
Yeah, well,
I just keep
you
going
can
back
just
to
throw
Jesus.
that one away now.
Well, and all these thoughts, I explained this in the testimony that I just gave. I lived in most of my life until that point. This was in 1990. All of my life until that point, I believed that the thoughts that were in my head were my own thoughts, and that I had generated them, and therefore they were probably true because I wouldn't have been thinking them if they weren't. And so I gave validity to them, and I identified them as my own thoughts, and therefore they controlled me. But when I had this experience, I realized that 99.9% of the thoughts in my head were not mine. They did not belong to me at all. They were projected there from evil spirits around me, trying to make me think like they thought. This was so clear to me that I have never lost that awareness. Now, when these kind of thoughts trouble me, I immediately, I don't know if I can say immediately, because sometimes they're very tricky and subtle, and it takes me a little bit to discern. But almost immediately, I realize, yeah, it didn't come from me. And it says God does not give us a spirit of fear, so I know jolly well it didn't come from God. So it's not mine, I thought. And I just say, don't have to listen to that crap. Nothing true about that.
So what about, I dream often of people that I know, and it's like it's a familiar spirit, which means it's demon, constantly. Lately, it's like
A familiar spirit is a spirit that passes down through the family. It's a family
they're
spirit.
not family, it's just people I know, that I've worked with, or all of a sudden, or I've hated. So there's a lot of
they inherited them. They inherited them from their family.
Okay.
Yeah, a familiar spirit is a spirit that passes down through family generations. We become familiar with it because of our family background. And so we become susceptible to it because we grew up with it and we don't recognize it. So that's why it has power over our thinking. And it influences the way we think about things. And it misinterprets the truth. When we hear the truth, it automatically twists it and makes it align with our belief system that we grew up with. And so that's a familiar spirit. We can't see it. We can't detect it. But when it comes from somebody else, and you're not used to that thing, it's glaring. You see it. You think, what the heck are you talking about? You believe that? And you can see it more clearly.
I mean, the only answer I have.
I say our family, we were brought up under a spirit of self-righteousness. By that I mean there was no distinction between the righteousness of God and our own righteousness. If we lived a good life and we got things right and we, quit smoking and quit drinking and quit sleeping around or quit lying or quit cheating or stealing or whatever else, if we were able to do those things, we would say, oh, well, I've succeeded in becoming righteous. But that has nothing to do with the righteousness of God. That's self-righteousness. And there was no ability in my family to distinguish between self-generated goodness and the goodness of God, which is a gift, which is given to you. It's just you did nothing for it. You did nothing to receive it. It's just the ability to be good that you have never learned. You've never practiced it. It's just a goodness that comes on you. And you're good because God is in you as your goodness. That's the goodness of God. There was no ability to discern between those two things in my family.
Mm.
You did a good job. That was righteousness. That was God, you attained the righteousness of God. There is a very, very vast difference between self-righteousness and divine righteousness. One is you doing it. The other one is, you know jolly well you didn't do it.
Yeah. Well, it's disconcerting to say the least of dreaming that every night.
Yeah, well, the enemy does torment us
Yeah, I am tormented. Yeah.
with those kind of thinking. And that's usually, like you say, a familiar spirit that you're familiar with and you can no longer see it. It's like a pair of glasses. Once you start wearing glasses, you can't see your glasses anymore.
Mm.
You see through them. And so everything that you see is passing through the glasses. And if
Mhm.
those glasses are distorted, then everything you see is distorted. And if you
Mhm.
get used to the distortion, you don't see the distortion at all.
Mhm.
You just think, well, that's just the way it is. Everybody sees it the way I see it. No, they don't. Because they don't have the same distortion in their view, in their perception. And that's what evil spirits do. They affect the way we see and interpret and perceive and understand truth. And we get this distortion in the truth and we think, oh yeah, I know the truth. No, you know a version of the truth, but it's distorted. It's corrupted. It's
Well,
not.
at least I know now, Sean, and everybody, is that when this happens, I know that it's not real. And just to wake up and, I have one word, Jesus, and the Holy Spirit. And then I wake up and it's like, please don't let this affect my life, because
Yeah, absolutely. That's it.
I'm
Jesus, the word
downtrodden by
Jesus,
it. Yeah.
the word Jesus, it means savior. It means save me. When you say the word Jesus, you're saying save me.
Mm-hmm.
It's a very powerful word because it represents a very powerful person.
Mm.
Yeah, that's it. We ask God for light and wisdom and
Mm-hmm.
insight to see the distortions in our understanding.
And my
I say, God,
psyche.
I think I can see this. I think I know what this means, but show me if I don't. Show me the truth from how you view this and how you see this. And we just have to keep doing that every single day. We live in this dependency on the Holy Spirit of Jesus inside us to straighten out the distortions in our perception
Mm-hmm.
because they're consistent.
Yeah. Well, I have to say, since joining this group, it's like eased the pain of the dreams and things like that. I don't know why I have so many.
Oh, amazing. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's true. Yeah. I had no idea. Yeah.
I dreamt yesterday I met a very handsome rich guy.
Really?
Yeah. I was quite happy about that.
Does he have a brother?
Could have a double wedding.
Yeah.
No,
Yeah, it was an awesome dream.
That's a good dream.
Well, thank you for letting me share, because even as a child, I was set upon. I felt that,
yeah,
there was a lot of darkness around me in the apartment, my parents, and so, yeah. I didn't know what to do.
Well, that's exactly where it starts, Nikki. It starts when we're kids and we're vulnerable.
Yeah.
I remember the day. I remember the exact place where I was standing. I remember the whole room I was standing in when my mother read a verse to the Bible, and her intentions were only good. My mother only had good in her heart. But she
Mhm.
read the verse, talked about the unforgivable sin. And from that moment, I
Yeah.
lived my life in fear of that.
Yep.
Because
Yeah.
because there was more than just my mother and my brother and sister there. The enemy was sitting there too and saying, we're going to screw this guy up for good.
Yeah.
And what I understood and what I thought is that I have to keep myself from ever doing this, because if I ever fail to be vigilant and I do this unforgivable sin, I will go to hell with no remedy. And I lived in that fear for 40 years,
Mm.
only from a good intention from my mother. But that's how the devil
Well, you would
works.
have heard it from somebody.
Yeah, well, the devil wants to corrupt everything and use it against us. And we just have to be aware that there are many voices in the universe, like Paul said, and they all have an agenda, some good and some not so good. So we have to be discerning to discern the voice of God, because there's no other way we're ever going to survive.
Hmm.
We are not going to survive without discernment.
Well, where do you get discernment?
The Holy Spirit of Jesus in you
Church?
is the light of the world. No, that is the last place you'll find it. Probably the last place on earth you will ever find it.
Well, not always.
Not always. You're just way too
All
harsh.
They're
Just
not.
because your experience of
all I'm
that,
saying
Calvin,
is,
does not mean that's everybody's.
no, but all I'm saying is, if you are not aware of the Spirit of Jesus in your heart, then church is a deadly place to go.
But it's a much different thing. I think you're way too hard on churches. It kind of bugs me. But anyway, carry on.
Yeah, well, I've lived it, and I say that by experience. I don't say it just off the top of my head.
Yeah, but
I
you're
look,
one man. You're
Mhm.
only
Yeah.
one man.
yeah, it's
There's
my
this whole
experience.
world out there that may have completely different experience at church than you.
It's true.
Mhm.
That's
Probably
true,
just that
and
it's his experience.
I'm speaking out of my experience, is what I said. That's my experience.
Mhm.
I would not encourage people to go to church these days. I would not. From my experience, don't go there. Because the point is, if church isn't the worst place in the world you could go, but if you don't know Jesus in your heart, if you don't know the Spirit of truth as an inherent part of your being, there's just so many ideas out there that pastors talk about that are just screwed up. I mean, these people come out of these seminaries and they are screwed up. They are seriously screwed up. And I'm not exaggerating. They have ideas that they preach that are just diametrically opposed to the Spirit of truth in your heart.
A lot
And
of
for
it is
me,
more, more, and more. You have to do more. I'm going to pray more. I'm going to do more.
that
Yeah.
is exactly it, is that it's all based on your doing.
See.
Almost all of it is based on if you, I challenge anybody, if you can go to church and come out of that church without a list of at least 1, 2, or 3 to-dos, then you've probably been to a good church. But I
Mhm.
don't think that's possible anymore. I have tried this for years, and there's always a list what you need to do. That's not grace.
Yeah.
That's anti-grace. That's against grace. That's legalism. That's the law. And you come away further away from God than you went in, because God is in your heart and He is your righteousness. That doesn't leave you any room to do your own.
Mm.
And almost all churches will preach a righteousness which is you having to do it. That's not an exaggeration.
Hmm. Well, it was
It's
very
a
powerful when we were talking about, what happened to you with this guy in France, and the forgiveness, and you're like, I can't forgive him. God's going to forgive him. I can't. that really helped me. Like with my past and being in kind of a cult situation like you were with this guy and this author, and it's like I hated him. And I finally went,
Yeah.
I still hate him. God, you forgive him. I still hate him. Yeah.
Yeah, well, you see, that's the way I grew up, that believing, and I was told that I needed to forgive everybody. And to the best of my ability, I did. When people would do things against me or steal or lie about me or cheat or whatever, I would eventually get to the place, okay, God, I forgive them. I forgive them. I forgive them. And I bore the cost of that. I think, okay, I just got to pay the dues and forgive the guy out of my account of forgiveness. But when I came across that guy who I told you about, my account went so far into the red that I knew I would never forgive this guy. I knew it.
Yeah, right.
And it devastated me. I thought,
Mm,
I am going to live with the desire to kill this guy for the rest of my life because he did such heinous things
yep.
that I could
That's
never
how I
forgive
feel,
him.
Sean, in this cult. Yep.
I knew I would never be able to forgive him. And God showed up one time, like I told you. We were living here in Summerland just like 25 years ago. And showed up in the room and he said to me, I was reading my Bible, trying to be a good Christian. God said to me, Sean, I've already forgiven Eric. It was
Mm,
his name. And I just blurted out loud. I said, there's no possible way you can do that without consulting with me. Because I said, he offended me. He cost me my whole reputation.
mm,
And I said, sorry,
yeah.
he's already forgiven. And I said, I was like a little kid throwing a tantrum. You can't do that.
It's freeing though. It's like I hate that SOB and I'm not forgiving him. You forgive him. Yeah, not
Yeah.
me. So yeah.
I just said, God, there's no way. You can't do this. And God said, yeah, well, it's too late. I already forgave him.
Yeah.
And then like I told you, I just knew in my heart that I was like a little kid throwing a tantrum in the courtroom, and the judge had already banged his gavel and said, it's over, this guy's acquitted. And you can't do this. And then I realized how foolish I was. Like,
Mhm.
seriously, you're going to contest the highest court in the universe? Little squirt like you?
It's so
And once I
freeing.
accepted the fact that it was over, and I realized, oh, well, that means I don't have to forgive him because he's already forgiven. That's good news.
I
I didn't
know.
have to take this out of my account. It came out of somebody else's account. And
And
God says,
how
it's
many years?
about time you figured this out.
Yeah. I mean, it
How
took me
long?
15 years to, I can't even forgive him because I haven't. But man, I wasted 15 years going from healer to healer and people laying hands on me. It's like, don't touch me. I hate that SOB. And so it was freeing, when we talked
It
about
is.
that. And so how people said, for 7 years they had to go into therapy. And, I did all this on my own. And it cost
Yeah.
me thousands to try and get over it. And finally, one day I just went, it's done. It's done. So, yeah. Yeah, yeah. He had an early death. I don't know where he is, but I don't care.
Well, it's a really good feeling to spend other people's money. And when
Hmm.
I realized that I could forgive somebody with somebody else's account, that just felt really good to me.
Hmm.
That I didn't have to spend my own
Yeah, right.
energy,
Yeah,
emotional capacity, which was so far into the red, I didn't have it
yeah,
anyway. But
yeah.
just to have that pressure put on me, no, you got to forgive this guy too.
Oh,
I'm thinking,
gosh.
I haven't got anything to pay this with. And then I realized, oh, I can use this account over here.
Well,
There's
the book
another
that you
person
wrote,
living inside me that
yeah,
forgives. And I thought, okay, I'll go with you. I'll live on your account from today on.
the book that you gave me to read was Dr. Neil Anderson.
Oh, right.
This big thing and how to get, entities and demons off you is forgiveness. I'm like, forgive what? I didn't ask to be attached. I was a newborn baby, and this thing attached to me, So
Mm.
you know, at first I was like, you know, I'm forgiving everybody. It was like, oh gosh, I can't do this anymore. It's just crushing me. So
Yeah.
Hmm.
It sucks the life out of you.
yeah, so that's his whole thing, Dr. Anderson, is forgiveness. So,
Right.
anyway, I don't know.
Yeah, I can't remember now whether Neil Anderson actually made that clear.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe it was clear to us as we read it because of what we'd been through, but I don't
Yeah.
think it
You know,
was.
who's the
Yeah.
guy in California? Sorry if I'm talking too much. Mario Morales. He's
Mario? Oh yeah, Mario Murillo.
yeah,
Yeah, right.
yeah. And so he goes, you know, in California or whatever it is, and you know, there's people all over, and all the drug dealers are dropping the pot and the coke, and
Right.
you know, they are forgiven in the moment, and so they all walk out like just like, wow, my life has changed. It's like I didn't feel that. So I
Yeah.
feel I haven't done something right that I didn't feel that. Yeah. I don't know.
Well,
Everybody's
I'm just emoting.
yeah, yeah.
yeah, well, we all experience it differently, that is for sure. We're all unique. But I
The thing was that they're men
think that
and they have it easier. God forgives men easier. Yeah.
oh, well, I think that's a bit of a lie. Remember the woman who had 5 husbands, she was forgiven in an instant. Yeah, God doesn't hold grudges against
Okay.
anybody.
Yeah. So it's not just men.
No, forgiveness is it's a done deal. You know, when we see it as a done deal, it changes our lives because it says God was in Christ reconciling the world unto themselves, not counting anyone's sins against him. Now, this happened 2,000 years ago. This was settled. God was in Christ, not forgiven everybody, carte blanche. The whole world was reconciled in Christ, and God held no one's sins against them. Now, if we can tap into that finished deal, that is a done deal. God isn't got to reconsult and go back to court and say, well, this is extenuating circumstance. We have to reconsider this now. You know, Nikki's case, this is just unique. We have to take this one into special consideration. It might not pass the
It's
grid.
true. I am so self-absorbed. It's amazing. So this is the thing, like these guys, you know, who, you know, they're dropping the pot and the coke, and you know, I'd like to check up on them, you know, a month later, see what's going on in their lives. So, yeah, I think too much. Yeah, I'm not panicked.
Well, the
I'm
other
just
thing that's very
thinking too
freeing
much.
is the other thing that's very freeing is the bookkeeper is not us. We don't have to keep track of the records. God says, vengeance is mine. I keep track of the records. I
Yeah,
will repay. I'll repay what needs to be repaid.
yeah.
So you don't have to. You're scot-free. Let the books go and let the bookkeeper take care of them. You know, I'm convinced that when it says at the white throne judgment, everybody's going to appear before the white throne judgment, and all the books are going to be opened, and everybody's going to be read all the things that are written in those books. And I got to thinking one day, I wonder who wrote all these books, because it says love keeps no record of wrong. So who's keeping all the books?
Yeah, I get it. I'm
Love.
a big pointer. Look at him. Look at her. Yeah.
Well, love keeps no record of wrong. So what are all these books at the white throne judgment? I think they're the books that we've kept.
Yeah,
And God gets our
exactly.
library out when we appear before the white throne judgment and said, okay, here's your record keeping. Are you
It's
going to
such a
hold on
heavy
to this, or are you
load.
going to just
Yeah,
take my account that this book has been wiped out?
yeah. I just want to travel lighter. Travel lighter.
Well,
Yeah,
get rid of the record keeping,
yeah, yeah,
because love doesn't keep track of it.
yeah.
This is the good thing. Love keeps no record of wrong.
Hmm.
So God has no books. We're the bookkeepers. We're the crazy bookkeepers.
Crazy, the operative word. Oh my gosh. Yeah.
Mhm.
Anyway, podcast. Come on, Sean. Let's get our first let's get our
I
first
agree,
guest.
Lindsay.
Huh?
You stay up his pace there. He needs to get that going. Erica's daughter Anita, who now lives in New Zealand, she was always telling him that too, and she was
Yeah. People need it.
gonna help us get going.
It's
Yeah,
like,
I think like 5 minute, 10-minute little podcast. I think
yeah,
it's a great idea.
absolutely. Let's do it.
Yeah.
It's just like a,
Yeah.
every day it's like, oh my God, I'm starting. It's like, what's that, Groundhog Day? You wake up and you're in the same thing.
Right, right,
It's like,
right.
please,
Well,
give
that's
me
a
your
good
5
name.
minutes,
That's a good
Sean.
name for the podcast. I'll call it the Groundhog Podcast.
Yeah. Well, I
I
thought,
say the same thing every time. We
exactly,
talk about the same thing.
because there is no other message,
Yeah.
right?
Well, we always laugh, and Lynn and I are always laughing about this. Have we said anything different in the last 2 years?
This is why I
No.
started taking notes because I was convinced we talk about the exact same thing every week. But we
There's
cover
no
a lot
other
of territory.
message. Sorry?
Now that I'm taking notes, we cover a lot of territory.
We do, but it
I
always
realize
comes
it now.
back. It's just like you get your
That
little,
comes back to the core issues we face, but yeah.
it's the gospel. There is no other message. And so,
Yeah, it's true.
the other name would be just another effing podcast, but we can't do that.
I might consider that one too.
Because we're Christian. Yeah.
Your wife won't let you.
No. No.
Another effing Groundhog Day.
I just think it would be so lovely. Everybody's doing it. Come on.
Yeah, yeah. I think it's the thing.
I think it's a powerful thing. I really do. Yeah.
It's where people go these days.
Well, I'm starting to feel a fire under my butt, so maybe
Okay.
I'll have to do
Good.
that.
There you go.
Don't get all crazy. Just keep the message the same. Keep it simple.
Yeah.
Yeah, true.
I'll even let you bring the chair back in this room so that you have a nice background.
Oh,
Look in the
so then
other
you have
direction.
guests, you can interview Lynn, and then all the people you know. Yeah.
Oh, and I'll come up to Vernon and interview you too.
No, I'll come there.
All right.
Well, that's the thing, sometimes I'm like, wow. Like I said, I did 35 journeys, and I was down in Brazil and Ecuador and Colombia, hanging out with shamans, and they're what do you call it? Animalistic? Anima? They're
Animistic. Yeah.
animus, yeah. Yeah. So I don't know why other people were getting all these brilliant I saw God and you showed me my life. So I asked somebody one time, I said, why didn't I get any of that? And they said, well, your soul wasn't in your body. I'm like, really? So I was out of my body, probably trying to protect myself from, being in this. You wouldn't believe what was happening. People were manifesting. They were like up in the air, and it was wild. I was like, oh, I just thought I'd just come down and do like a little journey, and it was pretty hard on. Yeah, I was terrified, but I went back for more. So, sorry, Sherry.
Yeah, I'm okay.
Oh, she's
She's
talking to
talking
somebody else. Anyway, so you can't talk bad about it. If you went online, you could Google ayahuasca, and a lot of people have had terrible journeys. And then everybody else is seeing God. I'm like, well, what's wrong with me? So the people who've had the good journeys will poo-poo the people who have the bad journeys. And you're evil, there's something within you. Thank you for letting me promote this, because it's really been traumatizing that there's something evil within you, that you had a bad journey. So for years, the guru that we follow was like, well, there's something evil in you. And I was like, oh, great.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
No, I would think it's where God is showing you that's not where the answer is. Like,
well, I didn't know
people
God
that are searching. Yeah,
Yeah, but God knew you.
Knew you.
Naive people.
And
naive.
I feel that, people that find God through a drug like that,
Mhm.
like we had a young friend in Summerland here just die because that's where he found God, was in a trip taking
LSD.
LSD.
Oh,
And
geez.
then he had to have more and more and more.
Yes,
And he eventually over the years, last summer he died of a drug overdose because
He wanted to get to God.
that
well,
was
that's the
his
thing.
God.
Yeah.
So God was showing you that's not the pathway.
Well, I kept doing more and more and more because I have an addictive personality, and it was like, wow. And all of a sudden, then I'm evil and I'm a goner and, just like beaten down. So, no,
Hmm.
was it you, Sean, that said you had a friend and he was doing ayahuasca and he left his wife? What happened?
Yeah, they're back together. They're back together. He seems to be. I mean, I think he got to the place where he didn't want to do it anymore. So it took him a while to clear out of his system, but he seems to be a little more even keel now.
A little more
So
what? Sorry.
even keel.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
He was all over the map before. He was so hyperactive and so I don't know. He was just not stable.
that's
But
it.
he seems to be more stable.
Yeah.
So yeah, I haven't asked him lately what he thought about that or where he files that experience now. Whether he thinks it was good for him or bad for him, I don't know.
Well, seekers, right? We were seekers looking for something that we didn't know how to find. So, anyway,
Mhm.
Well,
that
we
over.
are, and we're seeking for something that is not at any distance to us. But
Mhm.
if we look in the wrong place, we don't see it.
Yeah,
Because God is at no distance, and He's the only thing that can quench our infinite thirst and hunger.
Yeah, as through the whole night, I've been thinking of this YouTube song. Have you ever heard, do you know the group YouTube? The letter
no,
U2. The letter
yeah,
U
Oh,
in
you
the
too.
number
That's
U2
the
yeah.
is
Irish
the
guy,
name of the group.
Bono.
Yeah.
Yes,
Well,
of
they have a
course.
song. They have a song, but I still haven't found what I'm looking for.
Very famous
But
song.
you haven't found what I'm looking for. And
Yeah,
they've redone that. And there's this gospel choir that comes in right after they sing that. And it says, He will lift you higher and higher. And he's
right.
just gorgeous because I
Yeah.
guess he obviously found that he's a child
Oh,
of
what's his
God.
name? Is a devout Catholic, right?
The YouTube group?
The
Oh, no,
Irish.
he's a
YouTube?
devout Catholic.
Yeah, they're Catholic. Yeah. When they started the band, they were religious and Catholic. Yeah. They've never
They're
wavered.
Irish.
Yeah,
Irish
Irish.
and Catholic are the same thing.
Oh, okay, I
Yeah.
didn't know. Anyway, it's interesting. They have this gospel choir come in the middle of their song and just say,
Yeah.
yeah,
Well,
I love that song.
the most heart-wrenching thing is wasting years of your life. So when you get to be 63, it's like, man, I might only have 10 years, 5 years, 20. I don't know. Look how many years I wasted of my life.
Mm.
So is there a story
I
to
just,
that?
yeah.
I don't know.
Well, I think I started telling you about this book I was reading. I finished it and I have to return it to the library.
Oh, yes, you mentioned that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. He was a
Sean's
Holocaust
reading.
survivor.
Yeah. But
Right.
this, because he's a psychiatrist who survived 3 different concentration camps. But he came up with this method of counseling called logotherapy.
Yeah,
And
Victor, what's his name? Victor
Frankl.
Viktor
Frankl.
Frankl, yeah. And part of that process in his counseling is he'll quite often say to a person, how old are you? And they'll say 43 or whatever. And he'll say, no, you're 80 years old. Now, as an 80-year-old, I want you to think about your life. Look back at your life and tell me what you think of it. And that simple process actually has helped so many people see how stuck they are on one certain thought or
Yes. Or frame of life
limitation
or
or whatever. Yeah, yeah. and they can just throw it away and live a fuller life, a more
Yeah.
real life. I thought that's brilliant.
Yeah.
A lot of it is just so simple
Mhm.
of what he does in logotherapy, but I don't even know if there are many therapists around that actually do this logotherapy thing that he talks
Yeah.
about. I'm sure
Yeah.
there are, but
Well, my friend's like, you should go for therapy. He said, I am not talking about my childhood again. I'm not.
yeah, and that's what
Oh,
most, even Christian therapy, that's what it is. And you're in therapy, if you're in there once, you're in there for 10 years, you know?
no, I won't.
Are
Yeah.
you making any progress? I don't know. But with this other method, logotherapy, it sounded like, the goal was for you to meet a couple times and then you're good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I
You're
mean,
done.
that
Yeah.
makes a lot more sense to me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I have to
And
say, like, you both have helped me so much, and I love our group, and I love you. And just when you were talking about that guy and the people who had to go into therapy for 7 years, I'm like, man, so it's not just me. People get
Mhm.
caught in different things and they
Oh,
get
yeah.
traumatized. And so,
Oh,
okay,
yeah.
girl, it's been, 10 years. And so just drop it, like a wet
Yeah.
sign. So anyway, our group's dropping like flies.
Well, we love you too, Nikki. We appreciate all your input.
Oh, thank you. And I'm sorry I was inebriated the last time. So I
If
don't
you
drink that
hadn't told us today, we wouldn't have known.
I was so traumatized. I'm like, oh my God, I was obnoxious. There's a reason I don't drink. It was like I felt I was cutting off everybody, and I was like, blah blah. Just
No.
Well, now we're going to reconsider this now. Now that we know about this.
I'm
there's a
glad you
reason.
had a good time with your neighbors.
Yeah, yeah. Well, it was a gaggle of women, so which is funny because out comes the former marriages and relationships and what you did wrong, and it's like,
Oh,
anyway. But I was thinking, because you guys have been married what, 30 years?
32.
yeah.
32. And so what was before? Sean, were you married before?
Nope.
No.
He's an old man.
I got married 2 days before I turned 40. So.
No.
And everybody in his family said, "Oh my gosh, thank goodness."
Oh.
They
And,
sure
and
did.
Lynn, how old were you? Did you have a big love before Sean?
Yeah, I had a couple serious relationships, but I knew they weren't the right one.
Yeah. And so when you
So
met Sean, did you know, like, he's the one?
I did. I
Like,
very
within
much
what,
did.
a month or?
And well, I mean, I knew in a lot of ways, but one thing was I always had this recurring dream, talking about dreams, that it was my wedding day and I was walking down the aisle and it was always the face of this previous boyfriend I'd had. And I just dreaded it. And here I was in my wedding dress, supposed to be walking down the aisle, and I knew I could not marry that person. And then when I met Sean, I had that dream again. It was a recurring dream, but it was his face I saw. And then I just was flooded with such amazing peace. And I knew
And you knew.
that was a confirmation.
And so there was no way the old face was you were never in touch with him and he was long gone, but it was just showing. Look at Sean looking over.
Yeah.
I knew I was the right guy.
And when
Spite
did
of
you know,
everything.
Sean? Did you know like within a month, or they say men know within 8 seconds?
Well, I
Wow.
mean, I was pretty traumatized by the time I met Lynn, so I was pretty leery. But I knew pretty quick. I don't remember how quick.
That's wonderful.
Oh, I knew it. I knew,
You
well,
knew when you remembered the.
yeah, but that was too late then.
Oh. You were already committed.
Oh, do tell.
No, I was in Phoenix when this happened. It was a really bad day and everything went wrong. that day, and I was supposed to meet somebody and didn't. And
You
my
got
car
lost.
broke down or I got lost, I forget. So I went back to where I was living and I just totally disgruntled. And I just got quiet, and I just got with the Lord. And the Lord started talking to me and I wrote it down. I wrote everything down that came to me. And one of the things that came to me was, don't worry, within a fortnight, you will meet the person you're going to marry. And I wrote that down. I thought,
Oh,
oh yeah, right, whatever. And I don't talk like that. I've never used the word fortnight in my life that I know of.
That's an old school
I
word.
had to look it up what it meant. And anyway, it meant 14 days.
Or 10 days. What is it? I don't even know.
2 weeks.
It's 2 weeks.
2
2
weeks.
weeks. God prefers the
Yeah.
English.
So anyway, I forgot completely about it. Now, if I would have remembered this, I would have been completely freaked out when it happened, and I would have split, you know. But
It's specific. God specifically said she will call you in a fortnight.
Yes.
The woman that will be your wife will call you in a fortnight. And so,
I mean, if I would have been thinking about that and it was that day and she called me, I would have been out of there. Like, I mean, I would have left Arizona and I would have gone as far as anyway, it never happened
You're
until after we were
Italian.
married. We were sitting in our apartment one day and this thing came back to me and I thought,
now see, and this is where I remember it different. It was before we were married.
oh
It was
no.
when we were engaged that it came back to you, because you asked me if I happened to write down the day I called you.
Yeah, she kept a diary and I thought, oh dear, I gotta find out. So I asked her and she had the date. She actually had the date and it was exactly the date.
Right?
I had dated what I wrote down on that date, and she had the other date, and it was 2 weeks to the day. And I thought,
It's a
oh,
fortnight.
A fortnight.
yeah, it was a
2 weeks,
fortnight.
The funny thing was, when I phoned him, it was so awkward. He was, I was like, okay, I am never calling a guy again. That was just too
Why was it
weird.
awkward? I could see Sean like clamming up. What did he do?
Oh, he
Clam
was just so non-committal. I think I was inviting you because
Play
the
tennis.
group we worked with, they were, no, they were, I think we were going dancing on the weekend.
Okay.
And the group that we worked with, we were all kind of the same age, young people. We often did things together on the weekend. So I was calling him to invite him to that. And he was like so non-committal and so distant and so it's like he didn't even know who I was. And we, met each other and had been talking for a while. And I thought, nope, that didn't go well. Won't ever call him again. But that's
No,
the
man.
call.
Yeah,
Sorry,
so it
Barry?
was obviously something
I'm just
else besides.
registering disgust. That's all.
You're what?
I said I'm just registering disgust.
Well, I think part of it was that the place he was staying in Phoenix, because we were in Phoenix, there was another woman living in the house that worked with Food for the Hungry. I think she was there with him when I phoned, and that made it awkward because she was interested in him, I guess.
Hot commodity, Sean Calvin. Or were you Calvin back then?
I was.
He was, yeah.
Yep.
Oh,
Yeah, I never changed my name until after we were married. And we were at school in Hawaii. And I thought I would change my name before I got there so that nobody would know that I was Calvin.
It
And
was
we-
good timing.
And then after that, I was always Sean. Anyway, I told you why I changed my name, didn't I?
yes,
Yeah.
because you wanted to be called, it was a Grace thing, right? And it
Yeah,
wasn't
God said-
appropriate for you to be called Grace.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
Speaking of,
Well, I have
have we
something
got
in my eye.
have we heard?
I just
about JP?
Yeah, I meant to ask Sue to share, but I don't know if
No,
she's up to
she's
it.
having such a hard day.
Yeah, I didn't think
don't
it was appropriate.
she
I didn't want to
we
bring it
couldn't
up.
even answer Kent when he asked how you doing.
Oh.
There's been a couple encouraging days though, for sure.
Mhm.
Awesome.
Yeah, because he has not been able to speak since he had those 3 seizures. Is that a month ago now?
Yeah, at least.
And he's been in the hospital for 2 weeks and he
Mm.
had not been able to eat and he's been in intense pain because the medication they give him constipates you. So he hasn't been able to go to the bathroom. He's been in so much pain. It's been so, so hard on Sue and everybody.
No, I
Just
can-
heartbreak.
Yeah.
And anyway, was it 2 days ago or 3 days ago?
Yesterday, day
He
before.
was conscious all day, didn't need any painkillers. He was
Wow.
able to eat a real meal, and he got up and went to the bathroom.
Wow.
So that was amazing breakthrough.
And
That's
somehow he
incredible.
communicated. I don't know if he said it, but
He
anyway,
said a
the
few
message
words.
that Lynn got or that Susan
Sue.
got was that he said, "I'm going to walk out of here."
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So the past 2 days, but I mean, Sue was so run down and she was
Mm.
just coughing all the time and just talking to her, you could tell she was at the end.
Yeah.
And so she hasn't gone to the hospital, I think, for 3 days,
Good for her.
which is good. Yeah, it's too much for a mother to. But and she'd be there for 12 hours. They were doing 12-hour shifts because the care in the hospital, even anywhere hospitals you go to here in the Okanagan, I'm hearing the same thing from friends that have their mother in the hospital or whoever. Nobody's helping them to eat, nobody's looking after them, nobody's taking them off the bedpans. It's horrible. So there's been somebody with JP 24/7. But the other encouraging thing just happened today. He phoned her. She said it was so weird to see his number come up on her phone.
Oh, amazing.
So I know. So the past 2 or 3 days, we feel like God's really done something.
Mhm.
So we're hanging on to that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just keep reaching into the invisible and
Yeah.
bringing every spiritual blessing in the heavenly places
Yeah.
in the invisible into the physical.
Ministry angels, yeah, 24/7.
Amen.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? There's a doctor, he's a naturopath, he's in Port Charlotte, Florida. He deals a lot with the cancer and what JP's going through, seizures and things like that. His whole method of healing is fruits, berries, and melons. Stay on a fruit diet and go all raw until you get healed. I could never say this to Gina Grace,
Yeah.
but his name is Dr. Moores, Morse. Dr. Moores TV, you can Google him, and he's got all kinds of YouTube things. And he shows people with cancer, and on his therapy, the cancer wants to come out, and there it is, right? It's just coming out. So I don't know. It's just a switch in dietary things, eating fruit. He's big on grapes and lemons and doing this fast and going all raw. And, I would never say anything to her, and I don't know, I've never done it. I've never had cancer, but he's very well known. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, she's looked into a lot of natural remedies, that's for sure.
Yeah. And even for herself, right? So,
Yeah. Well, that was her first response when she was diagnosed. She knows this guy that had terminal cancer in his late 20s, and he's still alive today in his 70s, I think. And so she followed his plan. It was
and what was that? Was it fruit?
fruits and vegetables, mainly vegetables, and an enzyme supplement. But it was, I don't know, it's really special. I don't know what it's called.
Yeah.
But she did that for a year.
Yeah.
She did it for a year. She
Yeah.
lost all kinds of weight because she wasn't eating any
Protein.
really. But
Now there's
I
just so much out there, right? It's like go
know
carnivore,
so
do
much.
this, do
Yeah,
that.
and everybody's body is different. So,
Yeah.
one thing isn't going to work for everybody, but
Yeah.
it's worth researching and looking for, what'll work for you. But again, you have to listen in the spirit.
Yeah, right.
And otherwise, you're going to find yourself trying everything under the sun with no wisdom behind it.
And that's expensive too, right? It is.
Yeah, really expensive.
All that. That's a very good point. Listen in the spirit. Yeah, in the spirit. Yeah. I don't know. I just, I was crying and I was laughing. It's like, go JP, walk out.
Yeah, I know. We are too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Amen. Well, we need to cover Sue too, because she
Yeah.
takes, I mean, I can't imagine being a mother and watching your firstborn go through this. But she just takes it so hard. It knocks her down below the level of, survival. And this is not doing her system any good.
Yeah, to see
No, because
him.
she's got her own issues, right, too, right?
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah. So we need to just cover her too and
Yeah.
bless her and sustain them both. God is going to take care of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I really appreciate you guys' prayers. I know
Yeah.
God is bringing it to your mind. Praise
Well,
God.
sometimes I think that,
Oh, what'd you say, Sherry?
I said I prayed all the way home, driving home.
yeah,
Amen.
yeah,
Yeah, we were out cross country skiing today and we just had a great time of prayer. Just everywhere we are, we just keep praying.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It doesn't have to be this long, involved, that's what I'm like. I'm not
No,
praying
no.
long enough, Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Amen. I agree.
amen. Thank you, everybody. Thank you for letting me talk. And
Oh, yeah. No,
Yeah, it's
Not
nice
good.
to visit.
It is good to visit.
yeah,
We live too far away.
I know. Yeah. Yeah. I still haven't found a job and I'm just like, okay, God, I got this time with you. What?
Did you find a job?
No, not yet. Yeah. And I must say that I have been lagging behind and it's like, oh, I don't want to go back to doing what I have always done. And,
Right.
but hey, you got to pay the bills. So, that's why I'm thinking the podcast, Sean. I'll be your manager.
All right. So we're gonna pray down.
Ah, you do it, Nikki. He needs
I
somebody
can,
to
I can do it. Oh,
you know
yeah.
how to do it. Okay.
No, I don't
It's
know how,
yours.
but God will show us. But it's like
There
getting
you go.
people on and it's been, a lot of these podcasts are an hour plus, which is a lot of
Right.
people don't have that time. They don't want to do it. Okay, give me a
No.
5-minute Snapchat, what's it going to be?
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah. Well, if you've got an idea, you can help him run with it.
It's more like a 1 minute TikTok, guys.
Yeah, something
Yeah.
like that, right? Yeah, I don't know what all that is. Instagrams, and I don't know. I'm not on any of that. Are you on that, Sherry?
I do get it. Yeah, I was watching this really interesting. I don't know what his deal is, but he happened to come on and he said, guys, I was going through YouTube and seeing all these channels that have absolutely no viewers. He said, it broke my heart really. And he said, look at this guy, for example. And then his page is called Fishing with Andy. He says, look how happy this guy is. He's just generally happy out there fishing. He said, all my followers, I want you to go and like his page. And
Aw.
so I thought, okay, I'm going to go look. And I guess that particular TikTok was, okay, so it was yesterday. So that particular TikTok would have been 4 days old. And by the time I got to Fishing with Andy, he had 1.2 million followers.
Wow. How did they get paid, Sherry? How did they get
Yeah.
How did they get paid?
Through advertising.
Wow.
YouTube pays them. Anyway, the guy, Fishing with Andy guy, came on, I guess it was Friday night, and he was almost in tears, and he said, Tuesday night before, I always check my page, and I have 22 videos up there, and I think I had 400 followers by the time I went to bed, and I thought, well, that's weird, because this morning I had 2, and one was me and one was my grandson. And so he said, but tonight, that night, Tuesday night, I had 400 and some, and I thought, well, that's awfully strange. And then he said, I woke up Wednesday morning and I had 22,000. And he's like, I don't know what's going on right now. And and he said, it's now Friday and I have over 1 million. And he said, I just want you to know that you guys have changed the lives of me and my wife. We now will be able to retire.
Oh.
And he said, he says, I don't know if you know how it works. It's not that, like, I'm not a multimillionaire all of a sudden, but he said it's enough that I don't have to work.
How can you resist Fishing with Andy? So,
What's that?
Calvin, Sean, you're going to be the fisherman. Sean, the fisherman.
There you go.
Souls.
Fishing with
Fishing with Sean. Fishing for
Jesus.
souls.
You got me hooked now.
Yeah. Yeah. Kindergarten gospel. I think that's it right there.
that's a good one.
Yeah.
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 That's Sean's, all right. Talk to the Holy Spirit. Let's see what's going on.
Okay.
Back to kindergarten with Sean.
Yeah, because I've been praying about it. It's like, God, why can't I find a job? It's like, well, maybe you're not supposed to do this. There's something else,
Maybe.
We like to talk. So
Sounds like you've been listening to the right voice.
I don't know, but yeah, something's going on. Yeah.
Yeah. Interesting.
Okay. Yeah.
Well, that's an encouraging story, Sherry. Anything's possible.
We'll talk.
Well, it was very touching because you could see the guy was just, I mean, he's got to be 74, and you could see he was just close to tears.
Aw.
Wow.
And this was Instagram, Sherry?
No, the original clip where the guy said, go and check out
Look up Andy.
Fishing with Andy. That was TikTok.
And
And
how many followers did that guy have?
You must have had a
I don't
couple.
know, hundreds of thousands. I don't know.
Yeah.
Anyway, this Fishing with Andy went from 2 on Tuesday to 1.2 million on
That's
Friday.
amazing.
Yeah.
And the guy just looked like he was an absolute shock.
Yeah.
It would be.
Well, believe in miracles. All right. Start talking to the Holy Spirit. Let's get this going.
Okay.
I think it's kind of a neat idea, Sean. I think you should seriously think about it.
I do too.
I think I better too.
Yeah.
I think you better just do it.
Well,
Yeah.
maybe I shouldn't.
Stop thinking about
Maybe
it.
I should stop thinking about it. Okay.
Stop
Just
thinking
do
about
it.
it. Yeah. And that's what I kept saying. God, there's another way. There's another way other than me
Get
in a
it
9-to-5
started.
job that I hate.
Mm-hmm.
You know?
There's another way, Nikki. You're right.
There's another way. Yeah. And
And
so
you're gonna be walking into it.
I see how much, it's helped me, especially over the guilt and, the shame of being in a cult and being, being weak and naive. I mean, the shame of that is really crushing. And so there's a lot of people who've been, taken over, whether it's from a boyfriend or girlfriend or whatever. So that could be the whole thing. Yeah. Give it to the Lord.
That's not your fault. You shouldn't feel shame.
Oh, I did
not
for
your-
many years, Sherry. Yeah.
It's not your fault.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, people like me don't fall for that, and I fell for it. So yeah,
Well, it sounds like
Hmm.
you, it sounds like you did.
I told.
But you know what? When you're vulnerable and lonely, it's
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I would never. I would not feel ashamed about that.
yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I did for many years. So anyway,
It's
podcast.
a new day.
Yeah.
Podcast. Podcast. Okay.
Okay.
On that note.
You got me. You
TikTok.
got
You have
me.
a TikTok thing going on. I don't know what all that is, but you have kids. They know all this. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. We'll look into it.
Talking on,
We'll,
Jesus.
If you're gonna do it, I would do it on TikTok and not YouTube.
Okay.
yeah.
'Cause they'll take things down on YouTube. All right. TikTok. All right. All right.
Okay.
All
Look into
right.
TikTok tomorrow morning.
Here we go.
Okay.
Sign
Yeah.
up.
We'll get
Listen,
started.
I was
Okay.
serving. Yeah. Last
I
story.
like that garden gospel thing. That's kind of cool.
Which one?
I like that name.
Kindergarten.
Kindergarten.
Oh, yeah. Kindergarten.
Yeah. Yeah. It's so simple.
Kindergarten is not. You're not going to get a lot of followers with that, Richard.
With the
Oh,
kindergarten.
you thought it was the garden gospel?
No, with the kindergarten thing.
Yeah.
I don't think
So
people
you
will
don't think
be.
it's a good title?
I don't think that's a good name.
Well, that's
Not
when your
for,
whole
not
Right.
for, not for TikTok anyway.
yeah, your whole message
Uh-huh.
is it's actually simple. So keep it simple. Right?
Right.
TikTok is what? One or
Yeah.
two lines? Something like that?
It's a 1 minute clip.
Okay.
All right. Well, usually at
And
the end of
it's always a video.
Look on TikTok and see
Yeah,
what some
always
of
a
it is.
video, and it's always 1 minute.
Okay.
Okay.
well, that's
Interesting.
your whole closing thing.
Now one of the big draws about TikTok, which I would normally hate, is that now Facebook is pulling TikToks into its Reels section. It's got a new section called Reels.
Yeah.
Oh.
And so people who would normally not go on TikTok, like older people, people that certain people in certain countries can't get TikTok because it's run by
Chinese thing.
China.
Hmm.
Right.
So, but everybody has Facebook.
Yeah, the
So
older people.
it means that those reels are getting pulled into Facebook now and TikTok. So
Hmm.
Yeah.
that's awesome. But YouTube is not. Doesn't do YouTube.
Hmm.
Facebook doesn't.
No.
Yeah.
Well,
Okay.
usually you have a summary of everything you talk about. We talk for an hour and a half or whatever, but you have a very succinct summary of things.
Your story
Right.
about the cult would be very good, I think.
Yeah, yeah, you're that guy in France, and then what you talking to me about my
You
cult?
mean Nikki. You mean Nikki. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
yeah, because it was freeing to me to go, wow, other people have been under somebody's oppression and control, and it took them years of therapy to go get over it. So I don't know. Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. I'm getting excited.
God give us all wisdom.
Yeah,
We will see this birthed.
yeah,
How neat.
I think
Yeah.
so. I think it's because I was sitting at home. It's like I really like being at home. I don't want to go out there.
Well, there you go.
Yeah, I don't want to go out there anymore. I'm too tired. So, but every time I hear you speak and we all talk, and it's like I get rejuvenated. It's and why do I have to hear this every day? Like I hear it every Sunday, but I want to hear it every day. Let's just have like a 1 minute blurb. Get up, you're
Right.
driving in your car. I don't know what people do. They TikTok all over. And yeah, I think the
So
Holy Spirit.
is TikTok monetized too, like YouTube, or no?
I have no idea.
Do you know, Sherry?
Sherry?
We'd have to look that up. I don't know how that works.
Right. Okay.
But there's
Well,
no reason why you couldn't do both, right? But TikTok, like, okay, so what happens is a lot of people can't get their whole story down
Yeah.
in 1 minute. And
Yeah.
so
Right.
a lot of the time, it's frustrating as heck though, but a lot of the time the story's cut off and they'll say, okay, if you want to see the whole story, you have to go to TikTok or you have to go to
Oh,
YouTube.
Oh,
right.
yeah. Send you
Yeah,
over.
I see a lot of guys doing that now who they want to talk about something that YouTube won't allow. They'll say,
Mhm.
well, the last part of this is on Rumble, and so go over to Rumble and you can hear the rest of the story.
Mhm.
That's true. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I
Because
met this
Rumble is
couple. Oh, sorry. I was making them sandwiches, and she had an accent. And I said, "Where are you from?" She goes, "New Zealand." I said, "Oh, I spent a year there." I said, "What are you doing here?" She goes, "I'm getting married." I said, "Really?" She goes, "Yeah, I met my husband on TikTok. He's Canadian." And there he is. I'm like, "How the heck does that work?" He goes, "Well, I really liked what she talked about." And he said, "I had time and I flew over and I met her." I was like, "Really?" So I was just flabbergasted that a romance was cooking up through TikTok.
yeah,
So
TikTok is pretty
Oh,
famous. Yeah, it's pretty
well, maybe
popular.
you're single. I'm single. Maybe there's hope for us.
hey, we could start like a single Christian. I don't know. Anyway, I'm just like, yeah, I was just like, why am I still at home? I said, I like being at home. There's lots to talk about, and Sean, you got the gift of the gab. I mean, you put it together. Yeah, you could do it in a minute. You could.
I don't know when to quit. It's my problem.
Well, we'll cut you off.
Yeah.
Well, I will.
Yeah.
Sherry, I
Yeah, I
had to
told my
confess.
wife.
Yeah, I had to apologize because the last time I was on, I was very inebriated. I'd been drinking wine with my girlfriends next door, and I was like, "There's a reason why I don't drink because I'm
That's
obnoxious."
hilarious. I can't believe you admitted that. That's a scream.
No, because they were like, "Oh, we didn't notice." I'm like, "I act that way all the time. That's so embarrassing." Anyway,
That's a scream.
I was inebriated. I should have just like gone face down on the bed. I was just for Erica. Well, your skin's so nice. Oh, you're eating. Oh my gosh. So anyway, hey, let's have fun with this,
All right, I agree.
right?
I
Fun.
agree. We're on the
Yeah.
same page. All
Yeah.
right, well, we'll connect with each other about this for sure.
Yeah. Sherry knows what's going on. Sherry, yeah, you're a researcher. So Sean.
Yeah,
Yeah.
for
All
sure.
right. Well.
Yeah. And so we have
Okay,
to.
love you guys.
Okay, love you too. Bye.